What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? It's the Sunday show after dark, and I don't have a script written up, but it is May 19th, 2024, and we are here to take your calls. I'm here with Paulogia, of course, who this past week you got railed, didn't you? Like in a 3-hour live stream or something like that about your.
Oh, probably.
Was that this past week, or was that this week
Uh,
on
I
Cameron's
I lose
channel,
track
or
of
was
that.
it
I
the last
mean,
week?
Christians are just owning me every time. Everywhere I turn, Christians are just explaining to me why I'm dumb. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's.
I mean, you're just
But
so
yes, and actually,
unsophisticated.
I know this upcoming week, so I have a video responding to that one coming up soon, where I will just concede that I was destroyed and announce my Christianity. But for tonight, that's got to wait. I'll still be an atheist just for tonight,
Oh,
so we
damn.
can
I
get theist
forgot that's
calls.
how it
I'd hate for
works
the
in atheism.
theists. I'd hate for theists to call expecting to talk to an atheist and me just going, I agree. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, I thought that, from what I saw of their stream about you, it seemed pretty weak, like really weak sauce
well,
as far as,
the thing is, John, if you want to, so I was putting forth a naturalistic hypothesis for Christianity, and their response back was over and over again, well, this conflicts with the Bible, which is like, well, there's no such thing as a naturalistic hypothesis that isn't going to conflict with the Bible. Like, that's if that's your criteria, then why are you entertaining hypotheticals at all? Really? Because you just it this conflicts with what I already believe, so it must be wrong is not a good position in life for anything.
Yeah, and I totally liked how they called things controversial that in like good critical academic scholarship
Mm-hmm.
is like not controversial, like the
No,
anonymity of the gospels and
right, or that
a
maybe
lot of the
James
points that you
didn't
made.
write James, right? Yeah,
Right, exactly.
or that it's possible to feel guilty about things. It's, sometimes people feel guilty and change their mind, John. Nope, nope. That's the same as aliens.
Yeah. One of the
Anyway,
most popular arguments for the resurrection that, or at least that there was a tomb and that the tomb was found empty, is the women in the
mm-hmm.
tomb. I don't understand why people still cling to this, because it's like so obviously wrong that that there's not some alternate explanation as to why the gospels would have that in them, because they always paint it as something that's embarrassing, and I'm just like, how do you know it was embarrassing? Like that particular because Mark has a longer ending to Mark that was tacked on later, so obviously they felt free to change stuff. If it was
Absolutely.
embarrassing, sure, they would have changed it. So I just don't understand, but in any case, um
Even Detective J. Warner Wallace, he often will say, "Well, no, I had criminals all the time. They would deliberately throw in embarrassing details to their lies because exactly that people are like, well, they would never. That's so embarrassing. That can't be wrong." And it's like, yeah, it is. It's just that's people know how to create verisimilitude in their stories,
yeah.
even if just by instinct. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're perfectly fine. Just let people know if you want to talk about anything that we're talking about tonight, or if you want to provide proof of God, or you need some advice or anything like that, you can call in at 720-619-2288, or you can use the link down below in the description to use the web call-in feature if you would like to do it like that. So definitely do that. If you would like to help support us here at The Line, you can go to patreon.com/call the line and you can become a patron. There's also ways here directly on YouTube. You can help support us by becoming a member, sending in super chats, which I think $5 or more will be I can't remember. Do we address super chats on Sunday
Not on
nights? I
Sunday.
think we
So on
do.
Sunday, the super chats we
Okay.
appreciate them and we hold them close to our heart, but we don't read them out loud.
Okay. See, I've not been on a Sunday show in so long. I forget.
I mean, the producer can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
No, you're right.
Okay.
Okay. But still, the super chats help run things here at
They do.
the line. So if you want to help us out, please
And
consider doing that.
we read them and smile. So
yes. we do. During the show, if you see me smile randomly while somebody's talking, it's probably because I saw a super chat. But in any case, let's see. We do have a caller on the line that we can get to. But Paul, I'm wondering, what are you like doing this week, like over there on your channel? Like, do you have something coming out?
Well, the thing this week, as I mentioned, I'm responding to that video that you were even talking about. That's what's happening for me. So as I said, I'm going to be abandoning my atheism, I guess, because I was so destroyed. So that, yeah, we'll look for that. I know that. And what do you have coming up on yours? I think you got a whole bunch of videos coming out this week, but some cool ones on Wednesday.
Yeah. So I've got a video. It's actually 2 videos that are going to be coming out, and it's going to be put out on Wednesday. The other half of the video is going out on another channel, Vice Rhino's channel. He asked me to do something for his channel, so I've got one coming out on my channel and on his channel. And then I have kind of a heavy streaming week this week because tomorrow night I'm hosting Skeptalk with Aron Adair. So you guys got me again tonight. So sorry about that. But then later on in the week, I have an interview, it's a response that I'm doing, but with Richard Carrier on my channel against a Christian, very Christian nationalisty type of video. So we're going to be discussing things that are not centered around the historicity of Jesus. And so I got that on Thursday night. And then, of course, Friday night, it's my normal stream. So it's pretty heavy streaming week for me this week. I don't know how much actual video work I'm going to get done, but I need to start generating new content because everybody's like, we've already seen this shit before. But anyway, so yeah, that's what we got going on this week. We do have a couple of people lined up to talk to us. So you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right. So first up, we've got Lisa. Hey there, Lisa. How you doing?
Hello. How are you guys? John, Paul.
We're
Mark,
well.
Ringo.
I'm good.
Stephanie. Good. I'll try to be brief. I'm a relatively new atheist. I grew up Catholic, and my 90-year-old dad is trying to talk to me. He doesn't know I'm atheist, but he knows that I kind of have an aversion to going to church and mass and religion in general. And I recently had a talk with him about, I'm a feminist, so, the traditional Catholic Church doesn't think very much of women. And I've talked to him about the sexual abuse scandals and how, the Catholic Church has, what's the word? They'll take one priest who's offended and just put him into another parish, and that type of thing.
Recirculate.
Right? Is that what it's called? Yeah. So, so one thing I mentioned to him recently is that I had heard that the Catholic Church actually supported Hitler during, I don't know World War I per se, but World War II. But unfortunately, I didn't have like notations and citations that I could give him where I say, here's this. And he said, yeah, I had heard that too, but it was debunked. And so my question to you is, because there's so much propaganda out there that many of us have dealt with throughout our lives, how do we know when the history that we're reading about anything, for that matter, is true, or true to the best of our, proof and evidence versus propaganda? Do you have any advice on someone, where do I go to read up on history and feel confident that it's correct?
You want to go first, John?
Well, I was just going to say, I just did a simple Google search, Hitler with Pope. And there's several pictures of Hitler shaking hands with Pope Pius the 20 69th or something. I'm not sure which. But yeah, there's a lot. There's like photographic evidence of the Pope and Hitler like shaking hands. Now, how integral the Catholic Church was, in Hitler's regime or whatnot, I'm not exactly sure, but I would say that Hitler had a strained, I guess, relationship with the church, because I mean, you got to think about it. Hitler was trying to control the people. Catholic Church is going to try to control the people too, and also, Hitler was also using religious ideas in order to influence the people as well. I mean, there's on the belt buckles, there's the "Gott mit uns," God with us, I believe is how that's translated. So, I mean, regardless of whether or not the Catholic Church had a good relationship with Hitler, there was definitely a relationship there, and that relationship didn't exactly characterize the whole of the Catholic system, I guess you could say, like all of the Catholic churches, because there were plenty of Catholic churches and everything like that that would help hide Jewish people and during that time and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely not, you can't broad stroke it as, the Catholic Church was, they were all in it with Hitler. That's obviously not how it worked, but to say that there was no relationship, I feel is just as wrong. So I mean, there's that. But as far as like communicating with an older parent or family figure or anything like that, I feel like just remaining consistent in speaking to them and trying to speak to their more rational side with a lot of kindness and love, and being able to draw a line at some point and not let it get into like too much of a heated discussion, I feel is probably your best bet. I know that just in general, having a good sense of where you should stop having a conversation in general, whether that's with a family member or otherwise, I feel like it's a good idea to have that in mind when you start a conversation. Right. And so I don't know. I just, what I would do is I would just continue being that voice of reason. I don't know how well off your father is, but just continuing to be that voice of reason and calmly talking about it and everything like that, I think is the best way to get through to him if that can happen.
But it sounded like your goal was maybe like a broader, like, how do we know anything in history type question? Was I hearing that right, Lisa? So
yeah, that's part of it.
One of the things for me that was disturbing as I sort of entered this realm of, I spent most of my life not caring at all about anything about history, to now it's literally like what I do all day long, like trying to figure out history. It's shocking to me, how little confidence we really have about anything in history, especially ancient history, and learning that even when someone says this definitely happened or X definitely happened, if you press a historian on it, they're even like, like maybe 40% or 50%. Like some of these things just like the top marks are still really low depending on the thing. So my thing that I have kind of adopted, and it may or may not be helpful to you, is that I just apportion confidence to the evidence. So I'm willing to say, for example, that, okay, yeah, probably Caesar crossed the Rubicon, because we definitely know, or know is even this weird word, but there's pretty solid evidence for events on one side of the Rubicon and pretty solid events for the other side of the Rubicon, and it seems like crossing that particular river was probably how we got there. And don't ask me why this is always the litmus test for history. I don't know why Caesar crossed the Rubicon is the litmus test, but it becomes one. But the evidence is low, so my confidence is low, and it also, how does it affect my life? Because if I was to find out tomorrow that Caesar absolutely didn't do that, he went a completely different route, well, my life doesn't change at all. And that's because I didn't put any weight on that thing that we should have low confidence in. And so for something like Gospels, for example, that I think John and I would both be on the side to with mainstream scholarship that that they are anonymous works, that they are definitely literary constructions as opposed to historical things, that they definitely contain, that they seem to be more of a theological they seem to be more theological literature than trying to do history, all these kind of things. So how much weight of my life should I put on them? Well, probably not a lot, because they're really, and the fact that they're ultimately single source, right? They kind of go back, all of them kind of go back to Mark, which goes back to a set of oral traditions ahead of that. So even though there's 4 of them, they're really singularly attested. So if you found out some claim, for example, that there was this great new medicine that was definitely going to help, but there was only one published article about it in the world, you might not bet your life on that, right? Like, that's just not a single sourced type thing. So, but you might say, hey, well, maybe it's true. You would say, hey, I don't have competing evidence, or I don't have anything negative right now, so I'm willing to tentatively accept the thing. But you only put so much of your life's import onto something if you can really justify it. So, for example, I have been sick in my life, and the medical courses, the medical things that I took were quite serious, but there were millions of cases ahead of me that went ahead and did the same thing. So I put my life into some hands of some doctors, but with some pretty solid assurance to think that I had a good probability that was going to help. So if I went to someone who was selling me crystals to want to sell the same thing, I would be like, well, what kind of evidence do you have that these crystals work? So that's, I guess proportional to the evidence is kind of how I live. And I find that helpful, because I was shocked to learn how little history is based on what people consider to be solid facts that don't need to be very broadly interpreted and or are obviously biased in one way or another. I don't know, John, any other thoughts about general history?
Yeah, I was just going to say, most of the time, do not trust history.com. That's probably not a good source to go to. You'll end up thinking that Jesus was like, an alien from outer space or something like that.
That's not the History Channel, is it?
Well, no. Well, yes, the history.com,
similarly,
History
yeah.
Channel, both of those things. Yeah.
Yep.
But in general, for like researching things, I would probably, if you can, start with people that actually have like history degrees, reading different scholarly articles about it. And they can even be blogs, but it really depends on who's writing the blog or who the blog is referencing. A lot of people don't think to check like who is the source of this information. Finding like the source of it, and it, is pretty important. I generally try to hold to only sources that are experts like in the field, even if the expert is what some people might classify on the fringes. Weighing the evidence yourself, their arguments, because I feel like most of the time these scholars are going to try to put their arguments in a way that normal people can understand them, especially if you're just doing a quick Google search online or whatnot. But all the source of the information is always important. If it's an actual historical expert that's in that particular time and that's an expert on that particular time and place, that's always the best thing to do. As far as like gauging certain pieces of evidence or gauging certain arguments, I tend to do more of a Bayesian sort of like a mental Bayesian sort of analysis about it. And basically what I mean by that is I think about the background evidence for it and what that likely points to. So like, for instance, with like any miracle claim that's out there, where I first start off with is I say, okay, well, what does all of our experience suggest about miracles? Miracles typically are shown to not actually happen, that every miracle claim that we've come across, we've been able to explain naturally, or it's still up in the air, like we just simply don't know how to explain it. And so that makes it the most likely conclusion. So now what is the evidence for that particular like miracle claim? and you get into the weeds about the evidence that they present for that miracle claim, and it takes a bit to really kind of understand how to gauge the evidence, but typically with miracle claims, the evidence is just going to be like feelings or something that sounds like a magic trick, no real verifiable evidence that you would use in order to pronounce a conclusion of a miracle. And so adding that to the existing background information, it makes it seem more likely that, oh, this is a natural thing, or we don't know it, or something like that. So it's just kind of like a really quick kind of mental analysis of it. But I typically try to go about it that way, is gauging the background information surrounding whatever claim, and then taking that background information and adding it to whatever evidence they're presenting. So like the case for the resurrection, what's the evidence for that? Oh, women found the tomb empty. Okay, that doesn't actually prove that a resurrection happened or anything like that. So like it doesn't affect the prior probability of people that die in the ways that Jesus supposedly died. They don't typically come back to life afterwards in a new body, or how theology works out. And so it seems like until you can present better evidence, that's going to be the case there. So that's typically how I get. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that's just my thought process when it comes to it.
Yeah, very helpful.
Though John, you
I
mentioned,
appreciate both of you.
Yeah, I was just going to add on one thing. John said source methodology, or that's what he was talking with sources. Definitely, my favorite thing to do is I just go straight for the footnote, and then I go find that footnote and read it for myself, because often. And that's the source where they got the information, and then you go find the footnote that used, until eventually you find until you run out of footnotes, and then you're actually at the person who knew what they were talking about. And in that way, even Wikipedia is valuable. Don't read the article, but you can immediately jump down to the footnotes section, and you're like, oh well, this is like the related literature where I should start looking for this real claim. And so that's very time consuming, but when it comes to, if it's a claim that's important to you, just working backwards till you find the actual source, is super important. Same is weirdly true of, like, we found out that Daniel Radcliffe is the next Wolverine, and in the next Marvel movie or something, and then you're like, well, okay, where did that report come from? Well, it came from this guy on Twitter. Where did he get it from? And you can often, like, you trace it back to something reliable or something terrible. So it works on weird, mundane claims and important ones too. Anyway, that was my final thought. Sorry, Lisa, to jump in on your note there.
No, that's great. I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what I've been telling my teenage son. A lot of people say bad things about Wikipedia, but look at the footnotes and find out what the footnotes are, and then go back if you have to. And especially, like you said, if it's important to you, if it's something about Daniel Radcliffe, then maybe not worry about it so much.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. Yeah, so I'm so glad you said that. That makes me feel good about my thought process too, as someone who's just a layman, and what do I know?
Well, we are also just lay people who don't know, but at least if we're wrong, we're wrong together.
Right. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you both.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. You have a good night.
Bye. You too.
All right. Well, we are putting theists in priority. We don't have a theist yet to call in, but we would really love to talk to theists. So if you think that you can prove that God exists, or you disagree with anything that we've discussed so far, as far as like history and all that kind of stuff that we just discussed with Lisa, please call in. The number is 720-619-2288, or you can use the link down below to call into the show. And also, just to announce for this next week, we've got a pretty full schedule here on the line. On Monday, tomorrow, it's just me and Aron Adair on Skeptalk. Tuesday is Chewed Gum with Eve Was Framed and Alyssa over there. And then On Wednesday, we've got the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Derek from Myth Vision. And then Thursday, there's TACIS. It's Katy Montgomerie and Josie Caballero. Sorry, I don't. I know the L's can often be pronounced differently. And then, of course, next Sunday, a week from now, the first Sunday show is Seth Andrews and Forrest, and then the second one, the After Dark, is Matt Dillahunty and Erika Gut Sick Gibbon. So we've got a full week coming up next week, and if you will, tune in. Yeah, it's a pretty full week over here on the line. But in any case, so covered the number and everything like that. Oh yeah, if you like hearing all the calls here, consider supporting us, either member chats or super chats, memberships, or Patreon, which is the best way to support us right now. Going to patreon.com/call the line, and you can support us over there. I do believe that are we still doing the podcast for the people? I know that was floated at least one time.
The podcast for the people. The podcast for the people is yes.
There's also going to be a 30-minute preview at the end of the show of the most recent episode. So if you want to see that, that'll be playing at the end of the show.
Good to know. Thank you so much, Arden. So yeah, if you want to stick around after the end of the show and hear a 30-minute preview of the podcast, feel free to do that.
Has Jimmy called you yet for the podcast?
He's not called me, but to be fair, I wouldn't know if he's called me because I've kind of been out of pocket.
That's true. You've been away from your home. I know he's going to try and call me at some point, but unless you're one of my kids, picking up the phone is not for me. So I'm not sure that's going to work out for Jimmy.
Yeah. If I see a strange number calling in, I usually am like, no, leave a message.
Yep.
I'll have to get Jimmy's number in my phone if I don't already have it. I may already have it. So
I would, because I would love to talk to the patrons, but random weirdos, no.
Yeah.
Although,
all right.
Hey, if you're a random weirdo, you can be a patron too. That's fine. We accept random weirdos.
Yeah. All right. Well, next we've got Drew calling in. There we go. Hi there, Drew. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. How are you guys?
We're well.
Doing pretty good.
All right. So I suppose this is the point where I should start asking questions, isn't it?
If you like.
So,
yeah.
So, by the way, this is all Paul's fault. He told me to call in yesterday when I commented on his video, so here I am calling in.
Oh, excellent.
So I am, as I've described to many people, I'm a never theist. Like, I've never been atheist in any way, shape, or form. Like, I've done a lot of research, like trying to see if I wanted to find faith, but nothing ever grabbed me. But when I look online and see a lot of these personalities, it does seem like a majority of them are deconverted theists who seem to be some of the strongest voices kind of promoting against theism as a whole. And I was curious if you guys had any thoughts as to why that in general tends to be.
Go ahead,
I'll let you go first this time, Paul.
All right. So I think that tends to be the case. So ascribing motive, even for an individual, I'm kind of generally against, because it's very tough to tell an individual's motives. It's also it's even worse to ascribe motives to groups. That said, among the people who I know who are former theists who are kind of outspoken about it, theism tends to affect theists more. So, for example, most of the people who I love are currently theists, right? They are. So my community, my family, my friends are there, and because I came through it, and in my view, I learned that everything I was taught was incorrect or a lie, or however strongly you want to put it. It's very visceral to me. I am not that many years out, and I still wake up sometimes quite angry at the situations. Most of the time I'm angry at myself for being that gullible. I'm angry at people who, not everyone, but there were people in my life who should have known better, who deliberately misled me on certain things. So again, it is something that was personally affecting, is gonna just carry more passion in my life than for example, there are lots of causes I would support, but they haven't directly affected my life, and so just my passion for that in terms of thinking about it on a day-to-day basis is going to be lower. And so I often envy people who had no theism in their life, because it's not something they have to think about, and they never wake up, remembering what it was like to be afraid of hell, or just all those things. It's just I think anytime a cause is personally affecting, like for example, if you have a loved one who is stricken with a particular illness, be it cancer, or I'm doing an MS fundraiser tomorrow night on my channel because my partner has MS. Now, was I supportive of MS research before my partner? Absolutely, I was. But now it's a personal thing that's happening in my life. So I think that's just human nature, is that we identify with causes that affect us. I don't know. That's a general thought. John, do you have others?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely echoing what Paul said here. But as far as like, why is it so many have deconverted? I feel like there's just a lot of experiences that makes it a little bit difficult to really connect with if you haven't been religious. Just like the experience of growing up and thinking this one way about just reality in general, and then you come to find out, like, oh well, for me, I'm speaking personally here, just like I've always assumed these things, and now it's like, oh well, why do I believe this? And so that like radically changed my view about stuff, because it's like before that I would just accept things that I was told was true by people that I trusted and everything. And it's not that I thought that they were lying to me or anything like that, but I just sort of, slapped myself on the wrist. Like, why did you just immediately believe that? Why didn't you actually investigate it for yourself? And so like, that was a major change in my own way of doing things. So it's kind of like, I start to apply that in other situations as well. And I feel like, unless like if you've grown up, not having that experience, I guess you wouldn't necessarily have such a deep emotional tie to revealing that to other people. I feel like it can be said to be somewhat similar for religious people that become born again, because it's like, they weren't really true believers before, but then they become born again, and they are just, so emotionally connected to that experience. They want to spread that to other people. And I'm not trying to make it sound like a religious experience, like deconverting from religion, but I mean, I feel like it's very much the emotional attachment, to that experience that kind of invigorates people to like, talk about it. And I have to admit, before I left religion, I did not care about religion like one bit. Like growing up, like I always assumed God existed and everything like that, and it was just sort of like a throwaway thing. Like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. I go to church sometimes and everything. And then after I left religion, I realized how many people were making decisions based on these ideas that are just crazy. And so like it didn't strike me before as being crazy, but now after leaving religion and realizing like how wrong I was about stuff, that made me want to like voice my opinion. And so how I kind of got into it was I was voicing my opinion, and then I started getting ostracized by my family. And so I wanted a different venue to voice it, because I was still trying to be respectful to them. I still respect family members today about this particular topic. We just have an understanding that they just don't talk to me about it, because that's going to make them angry. Like I'm not going to get angry, but they definitely will. And so we have that understanding. But at the time, I wanted a different venue to sort of, let those ideas sort of ferment and allow me to come into my own and examine this new world view that I had adopted. And so that's why I started a page, and now my page is like 130,000 over there on Facebook, which doesn't really mean anything. But and it's also why I started doing like YouTube content and everything. Huh?
I said you got a couple fans.
Yeah, a couple. There's a few.
A couple people that hate him. So that means he's doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. More than a couple people that hate me. I think this week I got Eric Manning to dislike me. I don't know. He probably has a sour opinion about me because I called him a homophobic misogynist. But when you out yourself, you out yourself. But in any case, I don't know if that answered your question though.
Actually, you guys gave
I'm
me some
a cautionary tale. That's what it is.
Stuff. I get into debates with people on a regular basis, just because I enjoy debating people, and I'm rude like that. And one of the things that always comes up is most atheists are just angry at God, and I don't have the perspective of someone who has been a believer and not, so I can't give that kind of a response, other than, well, as far as I can tell, it was important in their lives, and then they found out that it wasn't real, so they want to speak out. You guys have given me a little bit more color that I might be able to sprinkle in there.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That's great.
So thank you for that.
That's. I think your answer was obviously a good one, because I think that was a more concise way of saying what we rambled about a bit. But I mean, we can. We hate. There was some characters like I hated Ramsay on Game of Thrones. Was that his name? There's fictional characters we hate, right? Like you can hate Darth Vader, you can hate Thanos, you can hate villains and things. You can disapprove of the reported actions of someone that doesn't exist. That's
you can have an emotional connection with a fictional character,
right? Exactly.
If that's love or hate.
And especially if, as John said there, that a lot of people are making decisions based on what they think that character is doing, right? Like if we're in this world where, hey, we're all acknowledging it's fiction, but we're basing our lives based on the Wizard of Oz, and we got a group of people that base their lives on the Cowardly Lion, and a group of people based on the Scarecrow, and we're all here like, hey, maybe none of those characters existed, but we don't think, but Dorothy might be better than some of the others. I guess if you have to pick one, you're okay with Dorothy. So, it's this weird.
I'm definitely doing the decision thing, because I've never gotten that across to anybody. It's like the decisions, the important decisions someone's making are based off the religion. Like that's one of the big things that I'm going to steal from this. Yoink.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I do have a second question if you guys don't have like a theist waiting.
We don't, so feel free.
Okay. What do you guys think of the value of attempting to debate with a true believer? And I don't just mean like in an online space. I understand that there's other people can learn from that and see the debate and how things go. I'm not talking necessarily on the grand scale of, oh, you shouldn't debate this person because all you're doing is giving them attention or this, that, or the other. But if you get into a debate with someone in real life, that you happen to run into, I don't know, in the grocery store or whatever. I'm exceedingly social, so I get into these weird situations. So, like, what do you guys think would be the value in that? Like, is there that valuable, or is that something that, like, the moment you go, this person is a true believer, like, just kind of walk away or something along those lines?
Well, so for me, I guess it kind of depends on what mood I'm in. Because I mean, I like debates too. If I'm in the mood for a debate, I don't ever expect to change the person's mind in that debate. I just what I typically try to focus on. This is something I mentioned to the last caller is trying to be that voice of reason out there. So I think that every conversation's it's valuable to push back and to say some things like in response to whatever their arguments are or whatnot. But I would focus on just the fact that you are like espousing this opposite opinion and they are being exposed to that opposite opinion, because I know for me when but before I left religion, I wasn't exposed to that. Like I was never exposed to somebody actually making the argument, to not believe in God or explain why they don't believe in God. it was always kind of just sort of out there that like, oh, everybody's a Christian or everybody believes in God of some kind. So like it really never clicked to me that there were people that, you know, didn't believe in God, or if they ever came up, they were always, you know, presented as these horrible, godless pagan people or whatever. And so, you know, it was a very weird sort of, I guess, perception that I had of people that didn't believe in God. And it wasn't until I had somebody, you know, that didn't believe in God in my life that was close to me at the time, that sort of, you know, was like, well, why? You know, why believe in that? Like, that seems ridiculous. Why do you believe in that? And so that's what caused me to start reevaluating things. And I just feel like anybody that anybody that you get into a conversation with, the best thing that can happen is that they will be influenced and start to reconsider what they believe, why they believe it. And not necessarily that they'll just automatically believe you, but just that they'll start considering alternatives. You know, like that's the best that you can hope for. And I guess the worst is that, you know, they could get mad and never talk to you again or something like that, which that can be bad. But hopefully you don't get into a position where you're like screaming at each other, which I have, like, and not to a fault of my own. Like, I remember coworkers that screamed at me because they were talking about gay Boy Scout leaders, and it ended up in a screaming match, and I just had to go back to my desk and, you know, act like it didn't happen. But yeah, I think that there's good to come out of it, even if you don't change their mind. At least the point is that they're getting exposed to alternative ideas.
Yeah, there's
All
a
right.
normalizing fact. There's a normalizing factor that I think that's what, you know, that there's just the more normal. So one of the things that's happened that's been great with the LGBTQ movement over the last 40 years is sort of this normalization effect, right? As more and more of us get to know people who are out and talking about these things, you know, then you kind of, even if you're not part of the community yourself, you actually kind of realize that it's a normal thing. And so for some people like me, when I deconverted, I didn't know anyone that was openly not a believer, right? So just the things. While it is completely your right to go ahead and pick a fight with anyone you want in a grocery store about, you know, what they believe, that so so I don't want to discourage, like, that's if that's what you want to do and you want to dunk on a theist or whatever, cool. But in terms of, I would hope, me personally, my wish would be that you would be leaving that person with feeling like, oh, that person isn't as evil as I thought they were. That you know, they're at least better than my stereotype of a non-believer, and even better yet, that you've left them with a pebble in their shoe type question. That they're like, oh, why am I so confident about whatever this particular thing was? So, you know, there's a whole line of like street epistemology, rhetorical question style questioning that is easy to pick up on and do in a quick period of time. As I think I'm just building on what John was saying there. So, you know, ask them, well, why do you believe? What do you believe? And then you say, well, why did you believe that? And why do you believe that? And if it ultimately comes down to just faith, you can say, oh, well, I don't really think that faith is a great way, because the Muslims also believe on faith, and so do the Buddhists. Like, it seems like everyone can justify any claim on faith. You know, there's some of those. So it depends on what your goal is, I guess, is the question. But I do think there is the good can come of it. I think John and I are both evidence that people who did believe can be reasoned out of it. I don't like the slogan that you can't reason someone out of something they weren't reasoned into in the first place. I don't like that slogan, because I am in. If that was the case, I would still be in my religion, and I'm better off without it. So take that for what it's worth.
All right. Well, thank you. And first off, you know, as a pansexual myself, like, thanks for the acceptance of LGBTQ plus, and I totally stumbled over that. And yeah, more good words. I mean, that's an argument that's been going around since, I don't know, I was a late 90s goth sitting in coffee shops overnight, arguing with anybody I could find over anything. And the whole true believer thing just comes up, and it's always like, well, why bother? Like, because it's a viewpoint they might not have heard before.
Right.
And that's why I say I'm a
Absolutely.
jerk about it, because yes, technically, am I forcing my views that the views exist on someone? Yeah, but not necessarily like I'm saying they have to believe it. But yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's all I have for
Awesome.
you guys. Thank you very much.
All
And
right.
thanks
Thanks,
for
Drew.
prodding me to call Paul.
No worries.
And
Talk again.
I'll do my best to pull my best foot forward and trying to be an example for the community, like, Paul and Drew, genetically modified skeptic, and Godless Engineer. You're an entertaining person in general. Anyway, thank you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
No problem. Have
Thanks,
a good
man. All right.
one. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, I don't know where the theists are tonight, but they are like scared, I guess. I mean, I don't know. If you're watching and you're a theist, please call in 720-619-2288. We don't have anybody
just
just
here-
yet. So
We're here blaspheming your beliefs, and we're going unchallenged. You better do something about that.
So I would be what's called my position is a bit complicated as far as God goes, because I characterize myself as an agnostic atheist in general. But for specific definitions like Yahweh or any of the Abrahamic religions that we got, I would consider myself Gnostic atheist. I say that God definitely does not exist. I don't know, where do you sit on this, Paul?
That is where although I don't tend to, I tend to now, if I'm in a conversation, I prefer not to use the word atheist or agnostic at all. I prefer now to use the word, for myself, non-theist, because it just captures, without people getting uppity about what it means. It just means, well, I'm not a theist. Like whatever I am, I don't believe in a God. So for the sake of the conversation, that's usually good enough, unless they want to be in a definition fight, which I find incredibly boring. So, but I'm with you on the whole. There's that the term lack theist has come up sometimes, right? You just lack a belief, and that is, for me, I agree. That's true for example. I feel like deism, for example, could be true in that deism doesn't claim that the God would leave fingerprints. So it's like, well, how would I even know? So then I can't know that a God didn't kick this off? A God who doesn't care, right, about any of it, who just kicked it off as a science project. So how could I possibly claim to be Gnostic about that? But like you say, which is why we on the show often will ask you, what do you mean by God, or what do you mean by supernatural? Because as soon as there is a falsifiable element, that's when it becomes interesting. I'm not super interested in the non-falsifiable claims. So, and so far, the gods that I've been introduced with that include a falsifiable claim, like you, I have found that there are, from my point of view, there's strong defeaters for all of them. So, I mean, I feel like we're in the same camp, even if we're wording them differently.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm right there with you.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I thought that might spark some theists to call in saying, your God definitely doesn't exist. Typically they, because a lot of theists like to jump on atheists as being like, oh, well, you're not making any kind of claim. It's like, okay, I'll make a claim. Your specific God definitely does not exist.
Yeah. For tonight only, we will defend that. Yeah, Christianity doesn't exist. Call in. Or Christianity's not true. It exists. It definitely exists because churches around the streets. We can. The religion exists.
But the popular thing to talk about this week, which I talked about with Godless Granny, was the commencement speech. That's really kind of struck a chord. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, there, Paul? Have you heard the commencement speech?
I've not heard the thing. I've not heard it in full. I will admit I've only heard the snippets, and there may have been wise words of wisdom that went along with it, but I certainly was disgusted enough by the little bit that I did hear. Certainly, it seemed to me that the kicker, the Kansas City Chiefs kicker, was, whose name is escaping me right this moment, was
like
definitely
butt liquor or
advocating
something.
was certainly advocating for that women who choose something other than child rearing and home bearing were making it's not that they've made a choice that he disagrees with, that they have made a societally damaging choice, and that they've been brainwashed, and clearly he's been wandering around that campus thinking to himself that all these women that are there are making a huge mistake. Obviously, it's something that he can have his opinion about, but he is saying the loud part quiet, saying the quiet part loud is as the phrase goes.
Yeah.
So when I was a Christian, like ultimately the churches I went to, even though we would not have espoused those things loudly, the general undercurrent of the belief actually is, well, yeah, the women who stay home are making a better societal choice. No, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have the choice, but the ones that are staying home and putting out a quiver full, are doing God's work. I was always of the opinion that, well, if you're not a Christian, well, you're why would you make these choices? It's actually oddly weird for me to see someone trying to advocate for their belief. They're advocating for the end product to their belief system, but without getting the buy-in first that they're building on solid ground. But anyway, I mean that's a lot. But I'm not affected by. I feel like I don't have shouldn't say a lot because I'm not the one who's affected by all the things so he wanted to slur pride, right? He wanted to slur. He got in that side jab of let's get back to the pride that doesn't get a whole month. We know what you're talking about. Those kind of things. Anyway, I am sad that your country, although it's coming more and so in my country as well, that people are feeling emboldened to put those kind of ideas out there, and of course they should have the right to them, but that there's a growing amount of audience that are nodding their head. I'm not bothered that someone says those things. What I'm bothered by is the number of people nodding their heads. Just like I was never scared of Donald Trump or any president that you guys have elected, but I've sometimes been scared of, like, I'm scared of the country that thought that was a good person to vote in, right? So again, it's we do need to normalize some better ideas. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What did you and Godless Granny come up with?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was. Pretty much, she affirmed what I was feeling about it, and yeah, I know that we're two guys up here talking about another guy shitting on women and LGBTQ individuals, but I mean, I immediately picked up on what he was trying to put down, and it reeks of, a lot of the sentiments that I've always heard growing up. Being in the South, North Alabama, particularly, there's a lot of misogyny that's just sort of rampant in Christianity that doesn't really get put out there publicly, like on a national level. But this Butke guy, or Butker, I think is what his actual name is, Butker. He's saying the quiet part out loud, like you were saying, and there's just a lot more people that have been not duped, but they've fallen in line with this Christian, very traditional Christian nationalist sort of view, and it's really weird to hear people say these kinds of things. Now, I guess I've got the perspective of growing up in a house where my parents divorced when I was like 8 years old, and so my mom went back to college and got her degree. She got a very good position somewhere. I'm not going to say where, but somewhere. She got a very good position. She made, a good amount of money, and she's been employed, ever since. Like, she makes her own money and pays her own bills and all this other stuff. And it's really weird to me to hear, some people applaud this whole idea that, oh, women should just stay home and be housewives like the entire time. And I've never liked that idea. Like I've never understood why anybody would want to force that on other people. Now, of course, Butker is trying to phrase it as, oh, I was just saying that, I applaud those that decide to make that decision because like there's this idea that it's bad to do that or something, which I don't think that anybody's saying that, but he's trying to rephrase it as if he's trying to empower the women that want to stay home and be homemakers and everything. But that's definitely not what he said, because he basically said, and I had a conversation with my wife today about it. He basically was saying that, like, look, women are not worth anything until they become a wife and a mother. The only way that they derive value is as soon as they get married. Like the being attached to a man is how they have value. And that's just.
Let me ask you this. So society wise, I think you and I would be on team that those are bad ideas. But with so much of our North American society deriving that from their Bible beliefs, there's a bit of a chicken and egg question when you want to say, like, we want to tackle this. So, for some people, I suppose there probably are Christians out there whom you could point to this attitude and say, well, this causes harm in the X, Y, and Z way. But ultimately, if they're saying, well, no matter what I believe, so if you're like William Lane Craig and saying, well, yeah, I guess if God told me that I should go shoot up a school, I would go shoot up a school because that's what God said, and God would be right. Is it worth having the conversation about, well, misogyny is the problem because of X, Y, and Z, to someone who's still going to run and say, but my Bible says that I should still endorse it anyway? Or are we better off? So do we talk about the misogyny, or do we try and deconvert them first? Can someone like this guy ever change his mind when he's a theist? Or do you think that which do you attack? Or both?
Yeah. Well, I think, so for this situation in particular, like, I'm just thinking about a public situation that is part of the public discourse, on either social media or anywhere else. I think that the value in pushing back and everything like that comes in reaffirming those that, the comments are made toward. So, like, I'm sure that a lot of women and LGBTQ individuals out there really appreciate how many people are pushing back against this, and seeing so many people that maybe are perfectly fine with women being housewives, or are straight people are not part of the LGBTQ community. I'm sure that they all very much appreciate people that are pushing back against them, even though they're not part of those communities. And I think that it sends a strong message in the public discourse to have so many people, regardless of what groups you can put them in, pushing back against those ideas. So I think that it's more empowering to the people that are watching than it is for to change that person's mind. Because I think that instead of focusing on changing the person's mind, because a lot of those types of people that are going to make those kinds of speeches, they're not going to have their minds changed. Like, they're pretty entrenched in it. I think that the value comes in showing others that, like, hey, you don't have to think like this guy. There are better ways to do things than he is trying to tell you. So, I mean, like, that's where the value, at least for me, comes in.
And you're not wrong, because obviously there's the value to affirming the people who are harmed. Absolutely. I let that slip out of my mind for a second, and I shouldn't have. That was for sure. But I guess because my mind was already on we were talking about the people who were nodding their heads, right? Because I was less disturbed by the speech than the people nodding their heads at the speech, because that was what was scary to me.
Right.
And so, but then the people nodding their heads again, if they are thinking this way and they're justifying they feel this way because my holy book said so.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually, there's almost no normalizing or pointing out the flaws is going to overcome, but my holy book said so. I guess to me that's a little bit chicken and egg, but you're right. It's worth affirming those harmed, even if no one's mind is going to be changed by doing that. You're right.
Right. Yeah. But I think speaking to that particular crowd, which you'll have to excuse me. I'm fairly certain that I have ADHD, so I get off in the weeds easily. But as far as the ones that are looking on and nodding their heads and everything, I definitely think that hearing somebody push back against like those comments, while maybe the person that's espousing them can't be convinced to sway away from their position, the ones that are nodding along and just sort of consuming it, I think that being exposed to these alternative ideas and these alternate ways to think about things, I think that can ultimately be very valuable, because then they're at least being exposed to it. And if they're going to stay entrenched, then they're going to stay entrenched. But if they're open to it, whatever you say or somebody else says could possibly trigger that thing in them, like it triggered in me, of seriously considering what I believed, why I believed it, and all of that, and can cause them to change their position. So I don't expect immediate change, but I do. I would hope that people listening to me talk about how, oh, this is wrong, this is disgusting, and everything like that. Maybe it'll open up their minds to reconsidering things. Like that. I guess that's where I end up focusing and finding value.
Maybe my disconnect there is I've never understood why problem of evil is so powerful among non-believers. Because for me, I was always like, well, if God's sovereign, like whatever, like just so you need to. So problem of evil for me, God just has sufficient reasons because the authorities that I was relying on said so. So I never, but you might be right. I have a blind spot maybe when it comes to problem of evil, because if you're pointing out to enough people that, hey, your religion leads to bad idea XYZ, and here's why they're bad ideas, and here's why they're demonstrably bad ideas. Maybe you do tackle that, convincing people that it's evil first, and then backing up to the other solution. So I guess maybe the answer is a different answer for different people.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because I lost a lot of my misogynistic ideas when after I left my religion. Then I was like, well, okay, why was I carrying this man is that a household idea? Well, the Bible. Now I don't believe the Bible anymore, so I guess I should let go of that. For example, like for me, the intellectual side toppled first, but I guess it can go both ways.
Well, yeah, and I think that those that would just appeal to the Bible, I think that at some point they could realize, like, oh, well, this really isn't that good of a question. Like the more they interact with it, I would hope. Now, obviously, like the apologists that you find online, the popular people that are making ministries in their entire careers being social media figures in the topic of religion, I feel like they have interacted with that and it hasn't changed their mind. So I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong in this, in thinking that it could cause somebody to change their mind if they're just appealing to the Bible. But I mean, I feel like if you don't try, then they're definitely not going to change their mind. So like, that's why I say the best outcome is to get them to, at least just reconsider, even if it's just on one point.
But I do standing with now that, like, as I realized as I was saying it out loud, standing with the harmed is the right thing to do, regardless of whether you can reasonably expect anyone in the world to change their mind. So regardless of the situation, just stand with the harmed.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we still don't have anybody calling in. So I don't know. I don't know what people
Obviously,
are
all the
doing.
theists agree with what we're saying.
Oh, definitely. They agree that Christianity is not true. By the way, Christianity is not true. And they all think that God doesn't exist. I guess. There we go. We converted
and that
everybody that's
evolution
watching.
is super real, and that
There you go.
there never was nothing, and that all morality is
Yep.
subjective.
Yeah, obviously.
These are things
all
that
reality is
everyone
subjective.
affirms.
So I don't know if I've asked you this because I think we're gonna give it like maybe another half hour, maybe to see if anybody will call in, any theists preferably. But what do you have like a favorite worst argument for God's existence? I know I had asked Godless Granny this, but I'm kind of, huh?
A famous worst argument for God?
Your favorite.
Is that the question? So my favorite argument that's bad, or my favorite argument that I dislike, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, look at the trees for me is like the one that I get thrown at me, that like that is supposed to look at the trees, therefore what? Like it's just an argument from intuition in general, I guess, that I'm supposed to stare at a tree and then intuit that what? Like it's just like nothing comes of it, but people say that like it's a whole, like they've said something profound, and so I dislike that one more and more the more I hear it.
How else are you going to explain how a tree can come into existence if not for magic?
Yeah, but they just need to, they at least need to connect a few more dots for me, because whatever your intuition about that tree is, I'm not seeing it. It's just don't love it. Obviously I go ahead.
You go ahead.
All I was gonna say is the other one that drives me bananas is the Romans 1:20, that you are just suppressing the truth and unrighteous. Like you really do know that God exists. You are just suppressing it.
Right.
That to me is amongst the ones like I say is like hard proof that the Christian God doesn't exist, because I have access to my conscious thoughts. That's really all I can know in this world. I can't know if I'm in a simulation. I can't know if the external world is real, like in terms of like the solid no. But the content of my own thoughts, no matter, I can't know that my thoughts are my own or any of those kind of things, but I can definitely know the content of them. So I can check the content of my thoughts as honestly as I can, and nowhere is God is real is in there. So that contradicts your book. I don't. And you could, well, Paul, subconsciously. Well, it doesn't help me because my thoughts aren't, subconscious isn't thoughts, right? So, yeah. So I feel like that one gets thrown at me a lot, but I feel like it's actually it's the reverse. It's like a definitive, your God is wrong because I do not know he exists. What are yours?
Right. The Romans 1:20 is a pretty big one. But I would say that mine is actually Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager, which is I guess got a lot of notoriety because William Lane Craig thinks that it's a pretty solid argument. But
Yeah.
Pascal's wagers one. I think that appealing to God as an explanation for nature in general, I feel like is a pretty bad one. I've come across that a couple of times. Yeah, I mean, I would probably have to just point to Pascal's wager for my favorite worst argument for God's existence.
I do wish that the creationist is a subset of, Christians or theists in general. But I do wish they would stop saying something rather that you think something came from nothing. When it's like, no, I don't know any cosmologist who thinks that there ever was nothing. So like you've invented a set of things that sound silly that I don't think, and then are trying to thump me over the head with it. So that's been my mission the last couple of years, is try to just, if I can convince a single creationist that you don't have to, you can think there's nothing, that's fine. But we don't actually think that there ever was nothing.
Right.
So yeah.
I feel like the only people that really think that something can be created ex nihilo is are theists primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. We do have a caller on the line. We had like 3 people call once, and then 2 people dropped off, and this is the one. It's Elizabeth that we're talking to. Managed to win out. Hi there, Elizabeth. How you doing?
Survival of the fittest.
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty
All
good.
right. What can we help you with today, or what do you have for us?
So, my daughter, she's 6 years old, started school this year, so she's got a lot more friends, and kind of everybody in the area is definitely, they go to church and believe in the Christian God, and we fairly recently kind of left that, but she doesn't really remember going to church and going to all the fun things like VBS and Sunday school and all that. And now she's at this point where she's upset that we don't go to church, and upset that she doesn't get to do the things like VBS. And my husband and I are just unsure of how to explain to her in a way that she'd understand, like, why we don't go. And like, our biggest thing is like, it harmed us. We don't want to put her through that. We want her to have a pretty well-developed brain before she, decides on religion, if she does. Yeah.
John, do you have thoughts?
Well, yeah. So I handle it with my son is, I guess I really haven't had to handle it too much because, like I'll ask him sort of like to take a barometer, I guess, as a barometer of his care for it. I'd ask him, like, do you want to know about God, or do you want to know any of these kind of things? And I kind of leave the conversation open to him, talking to him about that. But he's in a little bit different situation because he doesn't like going to like big group things and doing group things and stuff of that nature. So he didn't really miss out on anything, and he has friends, and I'm sure that they go to church, but he doesn't really miss out on that kind of stuff. But how I probably would have handled it if he was missing out is I guess I would just explain to him, like, well, look, we just simply don't go, to that church anymore. But, maybe we can figure out like a play date kind of situation. You can find like secular alternatives, either play dates or, there's probably, I don't know if you've looked for groups in your area, but I know that the few groups in my area that are here, they actually have like, other members with kids, and, they take them to the park like all together so that they can all play and things of that nature. So, I think that there could be good alternatives to it. And I think that the only thing maybe that your child might be missing out on is just that interaction with other kids. And I think that providing that sort of a play date, or just providing that interaction in a different way could potentially satisfy, that need that they seem to have. At least I guess from a parental point of view, that's how I would tackle it. But I'm not like a professional in that area at all. What are your thoughts there, Paul?
Well, my kids were, by the time I left my religion, my kids were in their teens and were kind of already past the point where all that fun stuff was going on. But I can very much imagine why someone would, the missing out. Like, my friends are in a club that my parents won't let me join. If you just take religion out of it, it's just, well, that sounds like that sucks. There's a club that won't join. I do think I think that you're very right in thinking that you maybe want to lay out, burden your child with the kind of harms that you're familiar with and that I've seen in this community and have experienced myself. I definitely think that's too much to lay on somebody, especially if they're going to internalize that. They're actually may get mad at their friends, right? Who didn't choose to be born in religious families either. So I think that's wise to maybe not lay out all that stuff. I do think it's important though to never lie to your kid. So if she's asking, if she cares enough to ask about those details, yeah, find a way to put it in an age appropriate way. But I would just very much echo. It sounds like what I think you say your daughter, was that correct, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
She sounds like she's missing out on some fun. So I think probably the right way to do that is to find her some fun, just like all of us adults. When I left religion, I lost my friends, I lost my family, just for all that stuff, and I needed a social place to go. Now, there was Recovering from Religion, which is a great organization for adults, not the same thing for kids. So you might need to like John said, you might need to more actively work. Hey, is there a craft club that meets on Sunday mornings, or is there or do you just gather friends of hers on Sunday mornings and you make that the pattern, or is it family time? Is that what we do? We have a what I chose to do is I created an alternate Sunday morning ritual with my kids that involved family that we always did every Sunday in the same way. So it got kind of some of that same ritualistic tradition, positive tradition style thing. So you might just want to build other traditions that you say, well, no, our tradition on Sunday morning is this fun thing that we do. It's we make waffles and play a board game, or we go to the zoo, or we do get together with friends, or we go to a basketball club. There's lots of different ways to build positive things that are happening at the same time, so that she doesn't feel like she's sitting at home and being the one left out. Those are my thoughts, I guess. Yeah, and there's like websites like Meetup and some of those kind of things are great for finding kid-friendly activities, and if you can find one that does it on a regular basis on a Sunday, all the better.
Okay, yeah, I like the idea of like starting kind of like a tradition to do on Sundays, and part of the thing too is her grandma, my husband's mom, does talk about God with her, does still go to church and stuff. She does not know that we're atheists yet, and so is my sister and brother-in-law. So both of her two kids are atheists now. She doesn't know that any of us are. We haven't said anything yet, just because we feel it would hurt her more, and it hasn't affected us until this point with our daughter.
Right.
And she talks about, Grandma talks about God, Grandma talks about all of these things, and it kind of ends up being like a little bit of this like heated discussion with her. She's just very frustrated, and we do get out with her. Like, we have play dates, and the nice thing about being in a small town is everybody kind of goes to the same park, and yeah, we are pretty involved in the community and with our friends. I think it's just that like everybody else kind of has this one belief, whereas we're very different from that.
Right. So I got a little bit confused there. Did you say your parents do not know that you're non-believers, or like what got heated if they? Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's my husband's
that's all right.
mom, and
okay.
Yeah, and then when our daughter talks to us, she's very upset.
Right. I think you just also need to brace yourself for that. At some point, your daughter is going to out you, because kids are not really great at, and nor should they be, at contextually keeping secrets, especially from people that they love or trust or to understand. So you probably want to have some contingency plans in place for when those beans get spilled against your desires.
Definitely.
You probably have already thought of that, but yeah. But I was outed in ways that I wasn't intending to be. and it definitely did cause more harm than if I had laid some groundwork. So that's the other thing. You might want to start laying some groundwork in terms of. I often suggest to people try and pick away at some doctrines that aren't like critical to their beliefs, but like you say, hey, what do you think? What do you think this idea that maybe aliens are demons? Does that sound right to you? Or what are some of the side things? Or maybe not everyone goes to hell, or maybe hell is finite instead of infinite. And just see if you can slowly start letting them know that you doubt some of the side stuff, they'll be less shocked. When it's like, I saw this coming. They believe in the main one. So, but that's your mileage may vary.
And I guess thinking about for the future, which I'm guessing what I'm about to bring up is probably not a possibility right now, but in the future, like do you think that she would be the kind of person that would respect boundaries? Because like I feel like at some point you would probably need to, have a discussion about, having a boundary with, how she talks to your child about it. Because I know I had to have that kind of conversation, with some people about my child. Like, please, I'd rather you not talk to him like about God and all this. And it really wasn't a question about whether or not like we believed in God. It was more like, well, I just, I don't want you to be, talking to my son about religion kind of thing. So I don't know if they would be like, the kind of person that would respect that kind of boundary. But I know at least I personally had to set that kind of boundary with a few of my family members.
Yeah, she is somebody who's very respectful of boundaries. And my husband and I, we've been having discussions about this a lot more lately. And this is, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's coming. We know that this is a thing that is about to happen. It's happening at a faster rate than we had expected. So we're kind of like, trying to get our ducks in a row. Like, okay, we got to talk about these things now. But I think that definitely is a conversation that will be happening very soon.
Okay. Yeah, and I would just say setting healthy boundaries is going to. I would think that it would be a very important thing to do, especially concerning a child, and also with yourself, because those boundaries can be pretty important to maintaining good relationships with people that are not atheist.
But definitely call back and let us know how all this, even if it's someone else hosting, we would love to get an update to hear how this is, how it's playing out.
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds wonderful.
Thanks.
All right, Elizabeth. Well, good luck with that. And I guess we'll just talk to you if you call in again. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
All right. You do the same.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that was the one other caller we've been able to attract. Now it's not surprising to me that people don't want to talk to me, but I figured people would be lining up to talk to Paulogia. It seems weird. Do you get that a lot? Like just people constantly like either tagging you on different social medias?
I do, yeah, and I will admit that I'm a little bit different on my Twitter profile than I am on some of my other social media. I feel like different platforms lend to different voices, so I try to be a little more studied and nuanced on YouTube, especially my scripted videos. But I feel like on Twitter I can just kind of poke bears, as it were, a little bit more. So yeah, definitely get the interactions there for sure.
Yeah.
And I
so
assume
just
same must be true of your Facebook, right?
yeah. I mean, Facebook is definitely a different animal. Facebook, typically, there's a number of people that will comment on stuff whenever my page gets unfucked because it's fucked right now. But typically, you'll get people and they'll be like, how did this trash get into my timeline? Because apparently people in 2024 still don't know how Facebook works. But they'll say something like that, and of course, people will respond to them. Typically, I don't really have to say much, but there are a few times when I directly interact with people. Yeah, I'm actually not too used to people seeking out my opinion on on stuff. So, no, typically it's like people just shit talking me is where I get tagged the most.
No, I get the usually, debate me bros.
Oh, the debate me bros, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh man, those are nice.
But they're not calling tonight. So where are they?
I don't know. I mean, the number is 720-619-2288. If we had two other people call in at the same time, but they dropped off really quick. One of them, I believe, was a theist. Yeah, I know, right? So I would really love it if a theist could call in and give us his argument for God. We'd love to hear, why you believe and what you believe and why you believe it. That would be awesome. We're not convinced that a God exists, but we would love to know why you do think God exists. And I got to tell you, I think we're if we don't get somebody soon, we're probably gonna head to the preview for the podcast here kind of soon, because if nobody wants to call in, nobody wants to call in. Me
you
personally,
can let us know why evolution is wrong.
Oh yeah, I feel like people always shoot themselves in the foot whenever they start talking about evolution. Me being one of them. Whenever I try to talk about ultra specific things, typically, see, that's why I haven't been doing a lot of responses to a lot of the creationist content, is because every time I do it, I need to spend a lot of front time researching what I need to say or I should be saying. And so it's it ends up at padding like the production time for a video, and sometimes I just don't have the bandwidth to do it properly. That's why I'm so glad that
someday someone will come up with an argument for God from engineering, and then you'll be ready. It's like, no, I know engineering, and I could.
I can tell you, there's a lot of people out there that already chastise me. Facebook, YouTube, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. They chastise me for being an engineer and also being an atheist, because they're like, how can you not see God's design? And I'm like, it's really quite simple, because I don't see design in this. And it ends up just being a design argument. And they're like, how can you not see it? And it's like, because it's not there.
Well, you're eminently qualified for that one.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think both of us are fairly on a similar level of dealing with the history stuff. I'm not an expert, and I don't think that you have a degree.
No, neither of us are. And in fact, my whole brand is that, like, a handful of years ago, a single digit number of years ago, I believed that dinosaurs were on the ark. Right? So yeah. I'm definitely in the dumb guy camp. I'm not in the. I mean that we're all learning this together, but we can learn if we want to. I think, and I feel like you are a lot of times in the same camp, right? It's like we're not experts, but we know we've now been introduced to some people who are, and we can also read. We can read and evaluate what experts say and compare it to. Sometimes it's best to read what a multitude of experts think, and then you learn that they don't all agree, and one makes a better argument. So, yeah, you and I are we're the cautionary tale guys.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like there's a lot. There's a big issue, especially in Christian scholarship, scholarship about Christianity, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff to sift through, and it's hard to determine like who is writing this or doing this research or saying whatever they're saying because of their bias rather than being informed by the evidence. And like, I know that you've addressed like Gary Habermas's book, which I haven't even read, like at least not taken up like a serious attempt at reading his 5-pound first volume that he's been working on for like what 30 years or something.
14 years. Yep.
14 years. And so I haven't taken that up, but it seems to me like, you know, that's one of those situations where I get quoted Gary Habermas so much, like, oh, he's he's an actual expert in Christian history. You should totally believe him. And you know, I find all of his evidence like underwhelming, and a lot of the historical evidence for a lot of the things in Christianity I'm find underwhelming. But I'm sure everybody knows me for that.
Did you read Lydia McGrew's article this week about how garbage Gary Habermas's book is?
No. Oh, that's another thing to talk about. Like, what is it with this infighting of the apologists? Because if it probably most people don't know this, but there's like infighting going on between what's called the maximal case for the resurrection and the minimal case for the resurrection.
So one of the scholars, and she's not in the biblical field, but she still has a PhD and has, I think, reasonable methodologies on things, just terrible conclusions in my mind. But Lydia McGrew has been going through and doing what I was doing, the very same thing, is going through Gary's book and what we recommended to the caller earlier, which was do the source methodology. Like, ignore what's in the text, just go to the footnotes and let's read the footnotes. And now I work, I know Bart Ehrman's material pretty well, I feel like. And so when I would see him quoting Bart, I'm like, well, that's not the context. You know, I went through all the quotes from Bart, and there was 60 some in the book, or maybe it's 100 and some, I forget. And you know, and it was clearly like, well, that's not what Bart's saying, but that's how you're representing it in the book. Well, Lydia's been going through a bunch of the other footnotes and finding the same thing, right? And it just seems like one of the patterns in Gary's giant book is quote mining and summarizing people in a way that isn't accurately reflecting what the thing. And so the conclusion for Lydia is that you're calling these things minimal facts, but in fact, you don't really have a list of secular scholars who would nod their head. Like, you're just saying that you would, but the quotes that you're using from these secular scholars are not affirming in the way he said. So I will send you a link to that article of Lydia's, because it's pretty damning. It's I think they're both wrong, so it's one of those weird, like, but it's a let them fight moment. It's like, okay, let the Christians.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, yeah, in that situation,
Both
I'm
are
very
wrong.
much like, ooh, get the popcorn. Let's just see who comes out on top.
Yeah. Right. What neither is considering is, well, maybe both of you are wrong, and maybe both of these are terrible arguments for the resurrection. Like, that's of course where you and I are at. But
let's say we did get a caller to call in, another atheist, William. What's up there, William? How you doing?
Hello. Got to try to get off speaker here. Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Doing quite well.
Hi, William.
Oh. Hello. Paul, I'm used to. John, you're new to me. And
awesome.
Sounds amazing.
Nice to meet you. You'll probably end up hating me. That's fine.
Oh, no. I already get along. You got the same facial beard and everything. Not a problem. I met a lot of you on the bad cruises. At any rate, I often get asked why I'm an atheist, and I don't bring it up myself. And I usually take a pretty much a laid back. I think Paul's like that, and I just let them ask questions. And I found that the it's a good half dozen people so far, some of whom I work with, it's so easy to debunk them. And all of them in the end just say, well, you've just got to have faith, William. I want to know what I can come back with that, because the rest of it is, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's so easy to debunk the things I've been getting from the Catholic guy, etc. I just let them bury themselves, which is sad to some degree. But I get this, well, you just got to have faith.
Yeah.
What could I say after that?
One of the things about the faith argument, and I brought this up briefly, from that I've learned from the street epistemologist type, conversations, is that it's often to go back. Well, is faith a good way of knowing other things beyond religion? Like, so should I evaluate my medical things by faith? Or people have, or for example, there are Mormons, for example, or Muslims, or people of other religions who that is also their professed reason for their religion. So you would obviously, and speaking to that person would perhaps be able to agree with you that it's very possible to come to false conclusions by faith. In fact, there's virtually nothing you couldn't justify by faith. If I wanted to believe that by faith, my dog is capable of solving math problems,
Absolutely,
but I just
understand. Yes.
But by faith, I could hold that position, even though there's no evidence. You ask my dog math problems, she doesn't answer. By faith, so I think what you want to do is demonstrate that faith isn't a reliable way of knowing other things, and so therefore the question is, well, why would it be a reliable way of knowing this when all kinds of conclusions that you disagree with can be affirmed by the same method? Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I would then add to another question that, because occasionally I was on my feet fast enough that I could think to try something like that. And thank you for reminding me. I forgot about, would you go to your doctor based on faith, which is interesting. I left my doctor who was trying to convert me. The next comment I got from two of them is, yes, but God and religion is separate from science. The science comes up because I'm a science teacher and majored in evolution and biology, and so I often get asked why I believe in evolution. But back on the point, then they'll say, okay, I understand you, William, about faith, but I'm in a separate world. Religion is a separate world from science, and I'm trying to say I don't think we're living in two worlds. Is that fair?
John, I have thoughts,
Well,
but you can go ahead.
Yeah, well, so the way that I normally think about this is science is a method, like the subject of science. The practice of science is just describing reality as we experience it or perceive it or whatnot. So science is geared towards describing reality, and religion, if it's right, making predictions about reality so that we can better interact with our world.
Yes.
If religion doesn't also have that in mind, then what is religion doing? What is religion describing? And so I'm not saying that they need to throw religion out the window or anything like that. But if you're going to sit there and try to compare the two, I feel like religion is not going to be describing reality as it exists, whereas science is doing everything that it can to do that. So, I mean,
I should have thought of
I feel
that.
like, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What's your
sorry,
thoughts?
I was just
Paul?
saying
You probably
thank
got
you.
better thoughts than I do.
So I wouldn't say better thoughts, but I actually do. I am of the camp that I think that religion and science, when best practiced on both sides, are non-overlapping magistrates. In that, and that is to say, they don't ask the same questions. So science isn't.
Okay.
Science isn't ask. I would agree that science isn't asking who is responsible for X, Y, and Z, because we don't have evidence that there is a who, right? So we're not asking that. But very much to echo what John, it's the same conclusion: is what important question do you think that religion is answering for you? right? Because if you just feel like if they feel like, well, I'm just living my life, it's too uneasy to not have an answer to who made the universe, and I just can't live without having a guess. Well, okay, I guess, all right, enjoy your guess. But if they say, well, no, then it tells me how I should live. Well, then you could say, well, no, because would you agree that harm is bad and that flourishing is good? And if we can agree that harm is bad and flourishing is good, then we are now in a more of a scientific realm in terms of what strategies best get us there. Right?
Yes.
So I guess I would respond back to saying, well, what questions do you think religion is asking that I should care about? So, that...
Yes, I like the way you put that. Yeah, I like the way you put that. What questions is the religion asking that matter or do I care? Yes, I will tell you that one of my teacher buddies said he has given up on science because it's wrong. It gets corrected too much. Did I get off? I don't want to get too far off.
No, that's fine. I think that science, self-correcting is a good thing. Like I don't get it when people act like science being self-correcting is some kind of negative or knock against it. But then again, that's people that believe that have a very theistic mindset. And in this theistic mindset, it's dogma is very much a part of religion in general. And they're not used to information changing. They're used to having the same information, taught to them when they're a child as as it's repeated to them when they're an adult. And so when you have a situation where science changes because of new information, a lot of these religious people just take it to be like, oh, well, that means that you can't rely on science. And I would just,
because it was wrong.
I would question I would just question well, what good is religion if they're going to continue to have the same, conclusion? But even if you looked at the history of religion, they've changed their positions on so many different things over the course of hundreds of years. It's just that they have to be changed forcefully from within instead of reacting.
Yes. I have Catholic friends who left the church because they stopped doing the Mass in Latin. So there is change. Minor thing. You guys have helped me put it together. These are not things I didn't understand, but it's been so nice having you lay it out succinctly. One of the things I will say in my class is I can help you learn how. I can help you learn what. The why is a little bit more difficult.
So and that's one of those. That's the non-overlapping magistrate. You're right. Science isn't attempting to answer why. So that's another good reason, though, why science shouldn't threaten a believer, right? Because there's a lot of scientists who were trying to just figure out how God did the thing. They assumed God was doing the thing.
Oh yeah.
So so I try and encourage my creationist people in my life who has to love to assume if God is truth, no true thing that we learn can harm God, and if the worst is that you have to reinterpret some verses, you're fine. Don't worry about that. Lots of millions of Christians have been able to reinterpret Genesis and still live okay. So science isn't threatening a true God.
Well, and I myself, but I'm probably prejudiced. I see science, even with the self-correcting, to be more consistent than the religion in many ways. My wife collects Bibles, and I must have 12, 15, 20 Bibles there. And a friend of mine wanted to check for what happened after Cain and Abel were born. And in 6 Bibles, we had 6 different versions. So where's the consistency? Yeah. But my main thing is what to say after they say I've got faith. And gentlemen, you have helped me put it in better order. My mind is sometimes scrambled. I'm a scatterbrain at times. But I thank you. I thank you. And it was
Thanks so much, William. Appreciate that.
With you. So,
call in again.
No, thank you for calling in.
And my screen went off. Is it? I know Paul. Is it Jimmy?
It's
other gentleman.
Godless Engineer, and I keep calling him John, which maybe he doesn't like. I don't remember.
No, I'm good.
All I remember is the engineers didn't have to take English. Do you have to take English now to get an engineering degree?
I mean that's part of your basics.
Yeah.
No, but my two sons are both engineers, and neither of them had to take English. They had to take one social class in general, but not English.
Yeah, I think I had to take a lit class, a literature class, and like a very basic, like basic stuff is what I had to take. But it was more about like getting your basics out of the way, and then once you got your basics out of the way, it was more focused on like engineering type stuff. So I haven't had like a literature class or anything like that in like, I don't know, 12, 13 years.
I didn't mean to get you so off subject, and I know you have many things. But I just want to say, I don't know that it came out of it the same as you, Paul, but I was raised Catholic, and when I was around 12 to 14, it just didn't start making sense. And I'm also kind of embarrassed to admit some of the problems that the Catholic Church, and I have seen it is so goddamn wealthy. So, but I came out of it, and I'll leave you with this. You'll be shocked. What helped me was actually sitting down and reading a version of the Bible I could read. Son of a gun.
Yes, exactly. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, William.
And I find that I can quote better than the theists. I thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful. So take care, and I hope to see you at the back cruise. Bye-bye.
All right.
Yeah.
See you, William. All right. So we do actually have a theist that decided to call in. So we're gonna jump to the theist real quick. Because theists on the Sunday show. What up there, John? How you doing?
How's it going, guys?
Doing right.
Good.
Good. Just remember, I'm calling over a thread of a small thing you said just to throw you guys a theist bone. So just keep that in mind. So be nice.
Okay.
I love theist bones.
There you go. So Hebrews 11:1, you guys were talking about faith, and I wanted to say, just to defend against the notion of what I know a lot of Christendom or people in Christendom promote this idea that faith is supposed to be lacking in evidence. But, the scripture there, it says, faith is the assured expectation of what is hoped for, the evident demonstration, and there's a little mark there, it says, or convincing evidence of realities that are not seen. And I know that verse 3 talks about by faith we perceive that system of things were put in order by God's word, which would be the logos, so that what is seen has come into existence from things that are not visible. I don't know if you guys find that inherently objectionable, but then I would say that the whole scripture there in Hebrews then ties in people of faith who actually spoke to God, or if you believe the narrative, obviously. So it wasn't a matter of having faith in God's existence or faith without evidence. They had faith that enacted them to do things. And they had the assured expectation that God would be with them. So I think that a lot of times people use this term of faith to denote a belief in something, when in reality the Bible doesn't really, a belief in the expectation, but not a belief in some invisible God that there's no reason
would you say, John, that the version of faith that you're talking about is synonymous with trust?
Trust, that's an interesting word. I suppose, yeah, I could see that point.
That's just something a lot of theists, when they point to Hebrews 11, they a lot of say, well, this is meaning to say that the kind of faith that I mean is trust. And what they're saying, they want to say that faith in Hebrews 11 is justified belief, right? It's not unjustified belief. Would you agree that there are other places in the Bible where one could where an honest believing Christian could interpret the way faith is used to mean belief in the absence of evidence. So do you believe that there are passages on either side of this question?
I guess there could be. I mean, I've actually specifically been looking for some, as it would relate to the idea of having unjustified belief.
Yeah. Right. Well, can I I just want to ask, what did Jesus say about this particular topic, about needing evidence or having it or requiring evidence in order to believe in his sacrifice and to be a Christian? What can you think of any scriptures?
He said, well, because he was providing evidence then, right? If you were sitting there in the crowds, and assuming the narrative is true, he was sitting there, healing people, raising people from the dead. That was providing some sort of, for the day, somewhat empirical evidence of him being real. But he did say, happy are those that would, in fact, believe these things and not have to rely on these signs and miracles. Yep, he did say something to that.
Right, like Thomas, right? Like the line he said to Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I agree. Yep.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just kind of I'm curious. Because normally a lot of theists like to prioritize what Jesus supposedly actually said about things. They normally prioritize that over, maybe some other things that are part of the theology. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just kind of curious as to how do you reconcile what Jesus says about needing evidence versus this claim about Hebrews 1 stating that, well, faith is when you have evidence and you're convinced of it.
I think that, obviously I would say that, the Gospels and some of what Paul wrote was designed to supplement evidence that what Jesus did and recorded. And I know that's highly debatable. I'm understanding your point that you'd say in turn that didn't happen and wasn't real. But I would say that the Gospels and the Bible, the Christian Greek scriptures, were written in part to convey the history of what he did. And I would say that why those people would be happy is because there is a principle in the Bible related to the more that someone is given as far as evidence, the more is going to be expected of them in return. The less that's given to them, the less in return. And so the idea would be someone that might find faith, assured expectation of the things to come, have belief in God, though they don't have as strong a reasons, maybe even than those in the first century where Jesus was doing all these miracles, they would actually be judged to a lesser degree due to that. So in some sense, there's somewhat of an equitable exchange. That's what I would, that would take a longer explanation, more scriptures, but that's,
but even that,
nuts and bolts.
But even that you're acknowledging that there's a Christian principle that says that people who believe with less evidence have some kind of advantage over people who require more evidence, right?
Well, I think it
even
would be
by what you just said.
Well, no, because they're then now I mean, it's a complicated theology, but I would say that now you're entering into a realm two where we have other evidences based on relationship with him. I'm not going to go into like people speak in tongues and Spirit and all that.
But even in principle,
there's a metaphysical side. There's a metaphysical side.
But none of that addresses. But you said to more who, none of that is addressed in like to more who, all that is encompassed in to more who's given, more will be required, right? So all that is encompassed in there.
Mm-hmm.
The principle, none of that changes the principle you were describing in that the people who were given less have more, are better off than the people who were given more.
That's correct. People who are given less are better off than the people given more.
Right. So that is that at least in principle, sure sounds like lesser justified belief is valued.
I would say the bargain or exchange is less. How about that? And maybe I'm not wording that correctly. It's just kind of off the cusp.
But can you at least then acknowledge that there's no universal way that this faith concept is being used in the Bible? I think where I was at least going with this was that definitely there are Christians who are using faith to mean trust, like you are. There are Christians who are using faith to mean literally blind faith, and they feel like that is a virtue. Just like William, the caller, was describing the person who's talking to them said, at the end of the day, you just got to have faith. Evidence doesn't matter because we're not talking about evidence. In that context, the people William were talking to were using faith to mean a lack of justification, the gap between what I can justify and what I accept.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to denote the difference between, it's not supposed to be completely evidence or lacking complete evidence. There is supposed to be some evidence for the faith that you have. And I'm saying that evidence can come, it's not completely blind faith.
But there is a gap, right? There's a gap between what you would normally accept evidentially, and you're rewarded for closing that gap with faith.
Yes. But I would say, not to derail this, but I would say that atheists have a similar, like abiogenesis. There's a certain faith that in the future that gap will be closed. So you're right. I agree.
There's no faith. I wouldn't describe it as faith, like the gaps that we have currently in our understanding of how life began on Earth. Like, I wouldn't say that there's faith that they'll be filled in. I think that there's substantial evidence, like in the background of scientific research, that suggests that we will in the future, like, understand it. Like, there have been times when we didn't understand some natural process and we slowly learned more and more and more. And so, like, it's proven through evidence that does actually happen. So there's no, I don't know, maybe Paul disagrees with me. I just don't see a faith component in that.
I guess for me, when it comes to abiogenesis, I don't think it requires faith to acknowledge that at one point there was no life on the Earth, and that now there is life on the Earth. Right? Like, that's not a faith position, I don't think. You would agree at one point there was no life on the Earth? So then the question is, do we have reasonable belief? So right now we couldn't describe abiogenesis in a way that, like, we could recreate it in a lab, whatever. I don't need to have any faith in anything that maybe we will never solve it. Like, that's obviously it's a historical thing, and it was a single time event. Even if we could do it in a lab, that wouldn't prove that that's how it happened the first time. Even if we could do it in a lab every single day, we couldn't prove, like, because it's a historical thing. So the only faith I'm having is my reasonable justification of, do I have reasonable justification to think that there are potential natural reasons why this could happen? And that's the extent of the weight that I put on that, for example. And John, I don't know if that echoes what you would think, but like, my faith component, I have absolutely zero faith that anyone's going to solve it, and nothing about my life would change if tomorrow they were making life forms every Monday. They have a new batch of abiogenesis. Nothing about my view about God changes based on that.
Well, I would say the conclusion might not change. That would be a pretty big jump. I agree. But I guess, like, I'm reading right now, Neil deGrasse, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, and he says in there, and I'm not trying to impeach you with his words, but he says, within a chemically rich liquid ocean, by a mechanism yet to be discovered, organic molecules transform to self-replicating life. And that, in going back to Hebrews, the assured expectation of something to come. He states a fact here. And again, I know these aren't your words, so here's the thing about his process. What if I acknowledge that God was the unknown reason that happened? Well, or at least equally denote it, I suppose.
Well, no, but all I'm saying is, like, Neil didn't say it was a natural thing. He said by some unknown, he acknowledged what we have evidence for was that we have prebiotic stuff and we have postbiotic stuff. And even if God did it, there was a mechanism by which God did it, right? Like, this.
Well, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So nothing about Neil's statement in any way says that that any of us are like putting any weight of what our lives. We don't make any of our life decisions based on some notion that science will eventually solve origin of life.
No, but I mean, I think there's statements of saying that it's fact, right? I mean, it's not as if he left some ambiguity to it. He says he doesn't know the reason, but he knows what's happening.
Yeah, but again, do you question that at one point there was no life and at one point there is life?
Oh no, I agree. But he says self-replicating molecules.
Well, yeah, that's because we have we have evidence of. Well, I mean, we have evidence of various parts of abiogenesis, like all of the necessary components, like we've been able to show actually happen naturally. And so, like the parts, as far as I understand it, maybe Paul understands differently, but as far as I understand it, like we're missing certain sections of it, but we've got a pretty good, like a pretty clear picture of like how it would have happened in a certain way, but we can't state that we know that it happened that way. But the fact is that we know that it can happen naturally.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I would say that the problem exists we have to put the cart before the horse, and that's where Dawkins talks about the selfish gene. But then, anyhow, there's all sorts. I would say that there's a sequencing problem with the DNA and all that, and what has to come before different parts.
No, but still, you understand.
But in general,
that,
I think.
But again, we're Neil deGrasse Tyson at no point said any of the things that are required. He just said we know that self-replicating molecules exist in a world without life, and we now have life. What are the dots that connect? You know, even if God did it, then God is the. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's the part where he said the chemical part. That's right. By organic molecules, let's see, within the chemically rich liquid oceans, molecules transition to self-replicating life.
Right, right. Let me ask this. Yeah. Let me ask this real quick. Can you name a process that exists now for which the only explanation for said process is God?
The only explanation, I can't do that. I have things I feel, but I have no way to convey some argument that you would accept.
Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what, like, I don't know whether or not I would accept it is important. What I'm trying to get across to you is that if we take a look at the explanation for how life began here on Earth, what you're proposing is that there's a distinction between either God did it or some natural process happened. And regardless of whether or not we know the full process, it's still going to be like a question between God did it, which to me, in my mind, just equates to magic, but either God did it or it was a natural process that happens naturally that we can explain. And if we don't have any examples whatsoever of a natural process being explained better by adding God to it, then why should we think that the beginning of life needed God in the first place?
Well, I think if I had to answer that question, I think one of the problems would be that I agree. There's a lot of Christians and other faiths out there that almost have a magic component to it, especially young earthers. I mean, I believe in evolution. I'm not a young earther, and I believe that there's a lot of natural explanations for why things happen. I believe that God put those natural explanations into the order in which they needed to happen. And so,
okay,
I think
let's go with that.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. I'm assuming you have faith in God, right?
I do.
Okay. So you called in to argue against this whole idea of faith being a lack of evidence. And so you use faith, which is a non-evidence-based faith. So does that mean that this particular thing that you believe in is backed up by evidence, or is this the faith that doesn't have any evidence?
The evidence that I would say that I have for faith is based upon a lot of the scripture in combination with how sensical the world is around me. I know that's very generic, but
I guess I was specifically talking about how about your statement about God, establishing these natural processes and all that. What kind of evidence do you have to support your faith in God being the reason for those natural processes?
I would say that it comes down to the order of the processes and how well established they are, and how the innate and the organic seem to be in concert with each other. And that seems unlikely to me to have occurred accidentally or without reason.
So you're saying that basic chemistry can only occur if you add a dash of magic to it?
No, I'm saying that if you really, and I don't have the math right here. I'm an architect. I know you're an engineer. Are you a structural engineer, by the way? Just real quick.
No, I'm a computer and software engineer.
Oh, okay. That the math, the probability of math of all these things being in the order in which we perceive them is. It seems like the probability itself is somewhat ridiculous, and so I do.
I feel like you don't know how statistics works. If you're saying that, I feel like maybe you just don't understand statistics. I don't know. I know Paul shook his head. Maybe I'm wrong about that assumption, but because that's just simply not how statistics works. Like if I have a set that has 1 trillion like items in it, and I have a 0.0000 like absurdly small percentage that I'm going to pull a specific thing out of it, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to pull that thing out of it. It just means that it's incredibly unlikely. And so I have never heard any scientists or any atheists or anybody say that, say something like, crap, I forgot where I was going with this. My point is that nobody's ever said that life is highly likely, depending on how you contextualize it. We're not saying that life is incredibly likely. We're saying that life is unlikely to happen in the universe, considering how many places we know about that life doesn't exist, and the fact that life doesn't seem to exist really anywhere near us in the universe. It seems like life is hard to form, if it does form, which it more than likely does form naturally. But so we're saying that it's incredibly unlikely for life to form, which is the exact thing that the percentage describes. If it's highly unlikely that these things would come together in the way that they do, that means that we should expect to see life be very scarce in the universe, which is exactly what we experience. So how does the percentage of all of these things coming together and falling in line like that, how is that an argument against a natural beginning to life?
Well, going back to the percentage, when you say you haven't heard, even Dawkins in his book talks about almost like a Drake-like equation related to the chance of life, and then he relates it to the number of planets and stars and systems we have out there to create some variable to explain how, to your point, how unlikely, but it is possible. The problem that I think you run into in the probability side, is that you have to prove it happened once to be able to add anything but a 0 times the probability. So you're basically running into your own dilemma, because you have to conclude and show that it can occur once, and it's not just the life. I mean, life is very robust. I agree, but it's the innate elements of. Okay.
What? Wait. Would you say? Sorry, Paul had an eye movement there.
Life happened. So I feel like the fact that we're having this conversation demonstrated that life happened once.
Right.
No, but I mean, as it relates to accidentally or without a cause, or not a cause, is not the right word, but accidentally in the sense that it just spontaneously occurred for a set of natural reasons. You'd have to demonstrate that.
I feel like
happened.
in my head, what happened when you described that was that, here's the Earth, and then poof, life happened immediately, as if it didn't take a long time for it to develop.
Well, the long time. I mean,
we're
talking about here. Imagine all the innate things. Imagine the magnetic fields required to protect us from the atmosphere. I mean, imagine all the natural systems of water.
Right. So your intuition.
I mean, you could go on and on and on.
But John, you understand that this is your intuition, right? Because my intuition is that this absolutely is not only happened here; it's likely happened in other places. Because in my intuition is to look at the size of the galaxy and even the Drake equations and see these should be, even with which I do not accept all the weirdness that's in that, but even in that, that this seems to me life feels inevitable based on the size of the galaxy. That's my intuition. You're seeming to argue you're looking at these numbers and saying your intuition is it's unlikely, but now we're just throwing intuition at each other in an entirely unhelpful way.
Well, I'm trying to answer it from the form you mentioned, Romans 1:20 earlier, and I'm trying to answer it from the standpoint of a first century person on this earth having to answer that question of why it would be inexcusable. And so there is a bit of intuition, but I would say that intuition translates into layers of probability as it relates to starting from, the constants of the universe down to all the innate aspects that we need for life.
You'd have to demonstrate for me, you have to demonstrate to me, no one's demonstrated that the universe could be otherwise, right? So again, there's this notion that we are, I don't know any cosmologists that have posit that there ever was nothing. So there's not
I know.
If there was something, that something has properties. And if that something has properties, we don't know that any of these other, these others that are fine-tuned could be otherwise. Now, maybe they could be, but it would be impossible for you to demonstrate, given that the only universe we can observe is one. So I'm going to be incredibly unimpressed by this notion that, the gravitational constant is this way. Well, it's could it have been otherwise? Maybe not. In which case, then it's every universe that was going to pop up had this gravitational constant, right? Or strong, weak electrical force. Go ahead.
Yeah. Except I would say too, though, some of the the multiverse theories. I mean, those are generated from that problem, right? I mean, a lot of that is related to the fact of trying to explain how it is.
Right, because it is people's intuition that this seems unlikely. But that's still all that it is. The people. So, but you understand that my intuition is not that, and lots of people's intuitions aren't that. So, intuitions are a weird way to argue.
Well, it's not but it's not just intuition. I would say that there is, and I don't have it right in front of me, so obviously I don't have every book open in front of me. But I would say there are probability ratios that are statistical. To your point, statistical numbers that are quite problematic over the layering of all these things put together into a coherent theory, which which is exactly why this multiverse and
hold on. Since we're moving back to probability here, maybe we can recontextualize this. It's not God kind of centered. There is in poker. Do you play poker?
I have. I don't play it a lot, but I have.
Okay. So there's this one hand called a royal flush, and that's when you get all the same suit from 10 to ace, right? And it's the best hand that you can get in poker. And it's got a 0.000154% probability of being made in a hand of poker, right? So this translates to once out of every 600,000 for 649,740 is what it ends up it occurs once in that many amount of time. So does that mean that it will never come up?
No, it'll come up.
Okay, when you quote me a percentage of like a probability of life developing naturally on its own, unless it is 0%, then it has a chance of developing naturally. And if you think about the number of chemical reactions that happen every second or happen, every year or whatever, like if you think the amount of chemical reactions that are happening, even in just one place, like on a primordial Earth, what do you think the likelihood is, given the percentage that you've been quoting of life developing naturally, given that immense set? What's the likelihood of it happening once?
Right now, the scientific number is 0 because we can't prove it. I mean, we can't prove it happened. Yeah, because
what source are you getting that from? Because you've been quoting.
We can't get it.
Well, you've been quoting actual percentages, and you've never said that it's 0% likely. You said some incredibly small number percent likely, which means that it's incredibly unlikely, which is exactly what we're saying.
There's no question that the math on statistics gets a bit skewed because people add a likeliness to anything. Right. I mean, I think even Dawkins even quotes some ridiculous example of that.
But now you're saying that there's a 0% chance of life developing naturally.
Well,
What's your evidence for that?
I'm saying scientifically right now, there's a 0% chance that chemicals can turn into self-replicating molecules. 0. We have no evidence of it.
What is your evidence for that? Or what's your source for that?
Well, I would say Dawkins himself, but I'm sure there's another professor.
Does Dawkins say somewhere that there's a 0% likelihood of life developing naturally? I kind of feel like that's antithetical to the biological work that Dawkins has actually written about.
Well, Dennis Noble is another one right now that in fact, I'm reading his 2023 book. I would say that what they're saying is that there is no evidence. They agree that there is no evidence. They may put a statistical value on it, but right now, scientifically, if you were to just like if roles were reversed here, and you were the theist and I was the atheist, and we were talking about completely different things, you would say, well, there's 0 evidence for this. There's 0 evidence.
I would never say that.
Self-replicating.
No.
Okay.
I would never. Right. There's not 0 evidence for anything.
There's no scientific. Okay.
There's a lot of scientific evidence that supports abiogenesis.
Zero scientific. No, but there's 0 scientific evidence that self-replicating life can come from chemicals. That's the full statement.
I mean, I don't know where you're getting that from, but there's several, like the Miller-Urey experiment shows how amino acids can be produced without any kind of like outside influence. So I mean, that's evidence of it. There's also scientific studies that show self-organizing chemicals and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm not claiming to be an expert in this field or anything like that, but I do know enough about it that there are, like, we have the individual pieces that show that abiogenesis is likely to have happened naturally without the need for magic.
Well, it's going back to my original point. It's a cart before the horse problem right now. Yes, there's some.
It's really not.
In fact, they use the term crystallize. It is, because it's the self-replicating part. It's the DNA part. That's where the element.
No, do you understand that self-replicating and wait. You understand that self-replicating and DNA are not synonymous, right?
No, you need it is synonymous. In fact, you need the DNA to replicate correctly, or it will fail. I mean,
do you think DNA replicates correctly now?
No,
do you think that there are no replication errors in DNA now?
Do I think there are no replication errors? If there are, I don't think there's enough to direct the cell.
I would like for you to go research RNA.
Okay.
Because RNA is replicating, but it's not DNA. So
Okay.
We don't have really. John and I. You should definitely call in when Forrest or somebody's on. But there definitely is replicating, like those replicating chemical processes that scientists are calling replicating. That maybe if you are assuming that what Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying was that they go straight to DNA, then I get understand what you're thinking the disconnect is. But all they were saying was replicating. And there are definitely proteins and RNA that we can in labs get to at least a replicating process. That's why they were so confidently saying we can get stuff to replicate. But no one, I'm hoping you weren't reading that anyone was saying that life jumped, that they went straight to DNA, because not the claim on the table. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, when it comes to all those other constants, again, you'd have to demonstrate that an alternate universe is even possible, for me to care about those numbers. But I wonder if we can wind this all back the way to faith. So I was actually saying, like, even if we were showing abiogenesis in the lab every Monday, we're making new life forms every Monday. That's just the thing that we suddenly live in a world that people are doing that. I don't think Christianity would stop. And I don't think atheism would stop. Like, it's not a linchpin, because I know a lot of theists would just say, well, now we've shown one possible way God did it. Like, that's all, and that's what just keeps happening, right? Like, so they used to think that thunder was caused by gods. Well, now we understand that it's not. But now, every Christian would say, well, yeah, that's how God makes thunder. Like, that's the natural process that we understand now. So it's not the same.
I think it would affect the personalized aspect of God, right? I mean, there would be a little bit of a hit there.
Why? I know Christians now who think that the God absolutely wound up the singularity, whatever that means, in an exact precise way, and that actually shows better evidence of design, that he was able to wind up a singularity that would get that outcome he wanted, rather than constantly intervening. Like, that God, the God who can do it in one shot, is actually the better God than the God who has to keep stepping in. Oh, well, now you're on water. I guess I should make you stand upright. Like, some people do think that God intervened with evolution at certain key steps. But there are definitely theists who think that it was all one shot, and God was smart enough to wind the clock in exactly the right way. So, again, I don't honestly believe that it would affect even that personal nature, or even the specialness of it, right? I mean, even if we were
right. Yeah, even Darwin was not an atheist, right? So, I mean, he
right. So,
believed,
like,
the Cambrian explosion and all that.
Back to our other calls, like, I don't think that answering these questions from science has never destroyed Christianity or any other religion before. So I don't know why this one would. And I also don't know why, weirdly, that you are wanting to. I want to rewind back to, like, why you were conflating that John and I are kind of in this place where it seems like maybe one day, like, that a natural process seems plausible, but that doesn't actually affect the theist question. So I don't understand why us kind of erring on the side of, well, it seems like God isn't required, is equivalent to what you were advocating for, which was that that it's a virtue to live your life with certainty on a little gap there, because you're definitely putting forth this God as a certainty in your life, or at least you're living your life very much as if it's true. That you're trying to equivocate those things. Do you see where I don't quite see that those are the same? Like, John and I are not in any way making any decision in any of our day based on whether or not abiogenesis was a natural or a theistic process.
Yeah, and I was using that more as it was more of a side argument related to a statement of faith, in the scientific world. But to my original call, obviously, it's the faith being the shared expectation, with evidence, as Hebrews 1:11 mentions. I was trying to defend against the idea that faith had to be.
Okay, so are you arguing that Christians who use faith in any kind of gap between evidence and conclusion, are you saying that all Christians or any theist who uses faith that way is using it wrong? Is that what we should say? If next time someone calls up and says that, we say, you know what, John called in on May 19th and he said that you're doing it wrong. Is that your position?
Well, I would say that someone's inside of or just to say someone a theist would be it would be based on theological discussion, which starts from the premise that God exists, versus a philosophical discussion of religion, right? I mean, so I would say that you're starting with the idea that God exists, and the faith is the assured expectation of the things that He promises. It's not necessarily supposed to be about faith that God exists. You're almost supposed to know that God exists, and faith is coming from the things that He promises and that He says. So that's the unique qualifier on faith I think I was trying to get across.
It sounds to me like you've got to first believe in God in order to have faith in God. Is that, maybe I was misunderstanding what you were describing there? It just sounds like you've got to believe first and then faith comes later.
Right. Faith used as Paul uses it isn't related to, you're not faith that God exists. That's not, I would say, a right use of faith. Faith that what he said will come true is the way that the scriptures talk about it.
You understand that presuming that God exists with no evidence is what we're saying is blind faith.
That's what I hear you. I understand that, but I'm saying that if you look at the Bible writers, they all come from the position that God exists. They're not questioning. There's not a lot of chapters in the Bible, pontificating whether or not there is a God or not, right? I mean, it all starts from the source that He exists, and then goes from there.
Okay.
So it doesn't. I'm now actually more confused about what your call was supposed to be about, because you're sounding a little bit presuppositionalist almost, right? Right now you're willing to say, I absolutely beg the question, that you're placing your God there first, and you're also saying that the gospel writers did that. Is a Christian correct or incorrect? My question was going to be, is a Christian incorrect or by using faith that way? But it seems like you're just saying that when it comes down to it, that's what you're doing as well. Am I wrong? Are we wrong? Are we crazy?
Well, no. Or maybe I didn't understand. I mean, or we're talking past each other perhaps, but I called in specifically related to the idea that faith, there was no evidence required for faith. And my point is that biblically, evidence is tied in with the definition of what faith needs to be.
Okay,
but the confusing part would be...
But you would agree that there are people in the world who use the word faith to say, I accept a conclusion that has no evidence. Like that there are just people walking around,
yes, I do,
saying that faith is their reason. Okay. So, and I'm saying now, am I allowed to now say to everyone who calls in with that, every Christian, say, no, John on May 19th called in and said that you're using faith wrong?
Well, I read...
Are we allowed to say that?
Exactly what faith... Well, I'm not the authority here, but I'm saying that there's a scripture here that I read that is the definition that Paul used for faith. Mm-hmm. So I guess if, as a qualifier to that, if the person believes that what Paul wrote is true, then I suppose there would be evidence that they might be using faith incorrectly pursuant to his view of faith.
Okay. So would you agree then that if two people are using the same word, but they're using different definitions of that word, that they're not actually talking about the same thing?
I think that it could get confusing as you use scripture in concert with the term faith, not using it correctly. But I agree that...
No, I mean any word in general, just any word in the world.
Yeah.
Like, so let's say I am using the word red to indicate a color, mm-hmm. and you're using the word red to indicate that you looked at words and understood them in the past. Those are both, we can say that, weirdly, that was maybe a bad example because they're spelled differently, but there's different words where you can conflate the meaning, right? Like that's just a weird thing about language. But that ultimately they're not describing the same thing. So when we are addressing someone like the caller William, who was dealing with people who absolutely were just saying that faith to me means X, means this blind faith with no evidence, we're still we're justified then to point out that is a bad epistemology, right? Like we don't have to reference them to John on May 19th as saying, well, there's a different way to define that word. That's irrelevant because they're expressing.
Okay, but this would be more similar. Let's say we had a contract or a report or some paper and it was using the word, and inside that paper or that contract, there's the definition of the word specifically noted so that to avoid that confusion. I guess what I would say in turn, I'm referencing Hebrews 1:1-3, that specifically states what faith is, and that should be the guidance or the point at which a Christian, at least, should use the term because it's explicitly
So this is why I'm saying we're not going out. John and I, as atheists, aren't going out and telling people what their definition of faith should be. They call us, they talk to us, and we say, what definition of faith do you use? And we will go by it. Notice that neither John or I on this call told you that you're using faith wrong. We're saying, hey, you go ahead and define when you're talking about faith, what do you mean? But in the earlier call with William, the person was self-identifying faith as a whole different thing. So I don't know why John and I are supposed to be the Christian police when a Christian is self-identifying using faith in one way, that it's our job to tell them that they should be using faith a different way. It seems like this is an in-house thing that maybe the Christians should get together on and figure it out.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree with you. Everything you're saying is very logical.
All right.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Because all we can do is when we ask someone what they mean by faith and they say, that means I don't need evidence to accept this. Well, then we just have to work with what they're giving us.
Nope, I agree. And keep in mind, I was looking for a reason to call in. I was just trying to find some reason.
Oh, well, perfect. Now, so let me ask, did you enjoy this conversation?
I did a lot. I did a lot.
Okay.
All right. Well, I hope that we were. To it again, I'll listen to it again just to make sure that what I said was mostly right. Hopefully, I didn't say too many errors. So
well, sure what I want you to do now is you go look up RNA and definitely call in.
Okay.
And if we were wrong about RNA, even if John and I aren't on, you can say, well, Paul and John said that RNA did this, and they were wrong because X, Y, and Z. And I can't wait for that call. So please do that, especially if
there you go.
If one of the scientists is we have scientists on the channel who are very active. I'd love to hear that. And sorry, John, I monopolized the end of that one.
No, have a good night, guys. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John, for calling in.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I got a rant mode.
No, that's fine. I went back and I looked at Hebrews 11:1-3, and I mean, there's a lot of different versions of it, but like, I don't know which version he was reading, but it doesn't seem like, to me, it just reinforces the whole, faith without evidence thing.
So actually, no, you're right. We didn't let him. I jumped ahead because to my own Christian rationalization of this chapter. Because the way I rationalized it as a Christian was, yes, verse 1 says assurance of what we do not see. But then the whole rest of the chapter is basically a summary of the Old Testament. And I think that if you want to be the most generous about saying, well, yes, you shouldn't read a single Bible verse. You should read passages, right? Because Bible verses didn't exist when they were writing this. I get why, as a Christian, you want to say, well, all these other verses rationalize give examples of a different kind of faith than what is expressed in verse 1. So how do you reconcile that? To me, that's just one of these weird things. Like, your book is broken because it's saying two things right side by side. So, but
yeah. I don't know. Like, I see, like, apparently the KJV, NLT, CSV, NASB use proof and evidence, but the ESV uses conviction of things not seen, which I don't know if that's too much different than evidence, but it just, I don't know. It seems like a weird hair to split on these things. Okay. We do have one last caller that wants to talk about morality. So we're going to try to take this quick and hopefully not keep Arden up too late. Hey there, Dan. How you doing?
Hey, great to hear from you guys. How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm just so glad that you hung on as long as you have.
It hasn't been that long. How you guys doing tonight?
Good. What did you have on your mind?
I wanted to call in. So I called in too because you were looking for callers, but I've often wondered, first of all, I love all your guys' content, but I've often wondered, I believe both of you don't believe in objective morality. You believe that morality is subjective. Is that correct?
Depends on what you mean by objective. What do you mean by objective morality?
Independent of mind. That's what I mean by objective. Morality, that's a phenomena that we experience, right? Yeah.
Fair enough. So some people want to say, some people want to call that absolute morality versus objective. So it's this weird semantic game that I just like to get cleared up to see we're on the same page. John, do you want to go first on this one? I ranted long on the last one.
Well, the last one had a lot more of your wheelhouse there with both evolution and the theology. But so I tend to go with, whenever I'm describing it from like a like whenever a religious person makes an argument about morality, what they mean is absolute morality, which I guess would be mind independent morality. I typically go with absolute morality just so that it's clear, because I think that you can be objective about your moral foundation, and you can make more conclusions. You can be objective about those conclusions, but I feel like that's obviously semantical.
Yeah, I understand you can make objective assessments once you establish a goal, but that establishing that goal is subjective in nature, right? But so what I wanted to call about was, which I don't have a problem with. I think I don't think there's a problem with that, but I have become convinced by T-Jump's arguments, and I'm not even sure how much he believes in this system as much as he uses it as a debate tactic, but I think it's pretty convincing that he believes in like a moral naturalism. Have you ever heard of that?
I've not.
It sounds familiar, but I can't. If you asked me to talk about it, I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. So the basic idea is for any phenomena, okay, in this case morality, if you want to prove that.
Oh fuck! He got raptured.
Uh-oh.
And then with that model, we'll try and make a prediction, right? Am I making sense?
I'm very sorry, Dan. Yeah, I'm very sorry, Dan. We didn't hear the last 30 seconds of what you said. So all we heard was the argument is basically, and then we heard, is that correct? So everything between those two things we didn't hear. So I'm very sorry. If you could repeat it succinctly, that'd be great.
Okay, maybe I'm moving around too much. So for any phenomena, if we want to determine if it exists objectively or not, what we would do is try to determine if there's a pattern so that we could create a model and use that to make a prediction. If that prediction comes true, then that would give us reason to believe that that model's correct, right? And so what T-Jump argues is that there is a basis for subjective moral systems, but if we value an objective moral system, then what we would need to do in order to establish that, because none has been already, is make a prediction, and should that prediction come true, then we would know that morality is objective. Are you guys with me?
I think you would need a very specific definition of morality that not everyone would agree with, and that's normally when I have this kind of conversation, I actually ask for a definition of morality, because, for example, Frank Turek defines morality as how well something aligns to the mind of God. That's literally how he defines morality, right?
That could be
if that's what, so then I'm going to apply T-Jump's this naturalistic model based on that weird definition of morality. Is like, well, how can I make predictions about the mind of God? I can make predictions that might seem like it aligns with what my view of the mind of God is, but I don't have perfect insight into that. So I think it might work if you are going to grant already a definition of morality that is somewhat grounded in goals, but that might then seem to be ethics as opposed to morality. I don't know, John, what do you think? I'm hearing it for the first time.
I was just going to ask, like, he's conceptually explained it, but I'm just wondering if you can give like a practical example.
Well, let me. So I just wanted to break down that first part to kind of explain, like, the value of the objective model over the subjective model, kind of in some sense. But the moral principle that T-Jump arrives at is that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral.
Okay, so, I mean, you're starting off from a subjective standpoint there. I mean, you're subjectively choosing.
I feel like all you could demonstrate is that what people mean by morality, what people mean when they say morality, can eventually be boiled down to something biological. And I agree with that conclusion. But
I would think that.
I don't know what that gets us.
Well, at this point, it doesn't get us anything, but it's a bouncing board to a better moral system, a more factually based moral system, or widely acceptable moral system, something like that.
But it doesn't make it more absolute, like in the sense that John was talking about earlier, like when he was defining absolute. Like, it still lands us into this thing. Like, even if you want to say that if it's biologically rooted, right, that it's like, well, then it's actually survival motivated. But ultimately, survival motivated is subjective as well.
I'm not even sure I would say biological, because I can see this applying to sentient robots, anything that possesses a will. So it's more than biological.
Okay, but I guess
like it kind of answers the question of who is a moral agent, any being that has a will, right? And then it's very easy to explain using this moral system, like the answers to moral dilemmas and stuff like that.
Well,
but you still have to subjectively. Go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, well, I mean, I think I was going to make the same point that you are you're still arbitrarily picking like this particular goal or this particular standard, I guess, for which you are judging actions by. You're arbitrary, which makes it a subjective, like, worldview, or like a subjective moral foundation. You're not providing us with anything that would be mind independent. Like it requires
not
a mind.
But all of the theories start from a subjective basis to start, right? So like Think about the justification
If
level
it's subjective from
required
the
in order
start,
to
it's going to
produce.
continue to be subjective through, like, even when you get a fully fleshed out thing. Like it doesn't all of a sudden become objective or absolute or universal or anything.
So when in science, when you want to prove something, the initial assumption is that thing doesn't really exist yet, right? But then you use science, and via that process, you take your subjective opinion on it and give us some reason to believe that it's objective, right? That's how science works.
Well, science is wants to make future predictions.
Yeah,
it's how well it predicts the future, right?
Until the prediction's made, we say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just imagining that's the case, right? But as soon as the prediction comes true, we're like, oh shit, he knows what's happening.
It's a little difficult for me to have this conversation when we're speaking in generalities like this. Like, is there any way that you could actually provide like an example of what you're talking about, like a moral decision that you feel is made using this absolute moral foundation that you're proposing here? Like, can you give us an example?
I'm not sure I would call it absolute, but maybe that's the term you would use.
Absolute, universal, doesn't matter.
So there's any of the moral dilemmas, like I guess we could do like the trolley problem or something. But there is so the trolley problem is what? Do you guys know it off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's essentially, it's traditionally one person versus five people or whatever, right? Like you have to decide which group to kill. And this system works kind of weird. So because the answer to the trolley problem would be something like both choices are immoral, but you choose the one that's the least immoral, given the pragmatic limitations of the situation. Sure.
Okay.
For the sake of argument, yeah.
I feel maybe I'm not being clear. I feel like I'm not being clear. I'm sorry, guys. But on.
No, I mean that's okay. I'm just like, I get that you were trying to build up some kind of like build up the argument and everything like that. It's just that you're starting off subjectively defining what your goal is, and then you're claiming that when you get to the end of the argument, it's apparently transformed into this objective or absolute moral system. But I feel like if you build it entirely off of a
true, yeah.
But
well, that's
it seems
what I'm
like
saying.
the prediction.
Only at the prediction.
But it seems like your prediction is that people will agree. Like that is the prediction, right?
No, the prediction. So the pattern that I see is that the moral sphere of influence of people is greater given a greater level of resources. So that's kind of the pattern that I see. So if we ever ran into an alien civilization, then they would be as moral as their resources allow them to be, something like that. Or if an alien robotic sentience comes to life, then it will be as moral as the resources that it's
right. But you understand that But you understand that I can just say, well, that's game theory. You know what game theory is?
Yes. You cut out on me for a second.
Like game theory is just one of it's like theories by which you can actually maximize happiness of more than one people by not everyone going for the most. Like that I think that's one aspect of what game theory can be. And I feel like just the weird notion that people will be as moral as their resources allows is just like, that's just another way of rephrasing my understanding, which may be flawed, of game theory. And it doesn't let me anywhere to like what's this moral prediction that this naturalistic model, what's this naturalistic model that I'm somehow supposed to see what this future prediction, like aliens coming and me observing how moral they are.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't get how that's a prediction, right?
It does lack a certain amount of specificity. So, I mean, I think I could agree with you there.
Also,
that I should definitely work on getting more specificity.
Well, also, I want to point out how your description of what you're talking about would inherently be malleable, right? Like it inherently changes as the resources change. So that would result in not an objective, like moral foundation, unless we're using the word objective in a different way.
No, so okay. So in the various moral dilemmas that you might pose to me using this system, a lot of my answers are going to be something like that's justified immoral action. Okay, and that's because the moral principle, as I've described, only allows for a small set of actions to be moral, and the rest are immoral, right? But given our society's limitations, okay, that's what causes certain immoral actions to be more acceptable than others, right? So, like, that's why
acceptable to who
in the acceptable, like, so when you answer a moral dilemma, one of those people is going to die on the train, right?
Right. Who's making the determination that whatever decision is not acceptable? Like, who's making that determination?
What? Each person who feels morality,
or each mind, right?
Or each mind, which therefore makes it.
We all feel.
Can you say it with me? It makes it mind dependent.
Our opinion, we have a moral opinion. That's correct. But what the moral thing is, right? That's the objective part. Like it is objectively true that doing something that someone doesn't will against their will is immoral, right?
How is that? No, I don't know. I don't think that's just an assertion.
Give me an example of something that you could do against someone's will that would be immoral.
Well, but here's the thing: we have to define morality first, right? Because all you're saying, no, because all right. Well, unfortunately, you're breaking up quite a bit, and I can only hear a little bit of what you're saying, Dan. What you just said is that we would agree. No, but you also seem to be saying that we would. Hey, Dan and Paul agree intuitively, or by whatever process we come to evaluate morality, that we would come to the same conclusion about a specific action. But that doesn't make it objective. And for us to say it's objective, we actually would have to agree on what the goal was first, because if all you're predicting is what a majority of people's opinions about morality was going to be, that's one thing. But the majority of people, I think we would agree at any given time, could be wrong, or could feel something as moral that might actually go against an actual goal of, like, reducing harm or increasing flourishing, right? Like, there have been societies that tend to agree that killing our enemies is moral, right? And then you and I might not agree with that, but they absolutely did. All your model is predicting is what people are going to think, and so that's why I was asking. Your model but it's predicting. All it's predicting is what a mind is going to come up with. Is what John was trying to get to. It's not actually making predictions about the action itself. It's just it's predicting opinions about the actions. Unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm missing something huge, and maybe I am. But
I don't think that you are.
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I don't know. I have to think about that. Opinions of the actions.
Okay.
It describes the principle itself, so it doesn't really have to do with the opinions. Although,
Danny boy, you're roboting a whole lot. I don't know if like
we
your
can barely hear you.
has dropped pretty much. Okay,
so
I think that we're gonna need.
Sorry,
that's all right. But think this through.
Can you hear me?
Organize your thoughts, and call in another time because for now it's just it. We in the audience can't understand what you're saying, so it's not giving you a fair shot.
Right.
No. Okay. All right. That's fair.
Yeah, and I'm going to be on the line tomorrow night for Skeptalk. If you want to call in and ask Aron, Adair, and myself the same thing again, feel free to do so. So hopefully you can have a better connection.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, I can't understand you, but have a good evening.
Bye, Dan.
Have a good night.
All right. It cleared up right there after I hit the drop button.
I mean, it's entirely possible
I feel
that it's on our end. Who knows? But it was just at that point, it was no point in carrying on with that audio.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody that called in tonight. But as far as this last call goes, I mean, I still feel like he was describing a mind-dependent system there. I don't know how you get to a mind-independent system if, like you said, he was predicting how people would react, and that requires a mind in some kind of fashion, whether it's artificial mind or biological mind, it doesn't matter. I don't know how he gets to,
Right. It was like it was almost like some ethics prediction like, okay, that might be interesting if you could come up with a model of ethics prediction. That would be an interesting that'd be sociology, right? That's what that would be. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be morality at that point. It's just that I can predict that, this country has limited resources, and so based on their geography and all these things, I can predict this is what they're going to think is moral. Okay, cool. I mean,
and wouldn't that inherently be dependent on their resource? Like, as they gain more resources, they have different resources available to them. Then, their decisions would change, right?
Right, but I feel like this was. I think they were trying to say that they can scale up and down, like they can account for different variables in their model. And you plug the variables in and they can come up with what the answer is. So that's not subjective because they figured out what the rules are under all the, I don't know. I'm guessing because we could only half hear what he was saying. So
yeah,
I don't want to butcher. I don't want to butcher the model, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to butcher it at all either. I was just I was just confused as to the entire system. But
me too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna let everybody. I believe we're gonna do a 30-minute preview of the podcast. So I know that we still got about another 30 minutes here. But anyways, I hope that you guys had an awesome night tonight. I know I did. I hope that you will come back tomorrow for Aron Adair. Make sure you tell some theist friends, if you have theist friends, that we're going to be doing a show tomorrow night. It would be awesome to have some theists call in. But we do appreciate all the atheists that called in and asked for our help. I guess we will see all you heathens later.
Fun one. What is the last thing you remember being wrong about? Might take a second to think of, but.
All right, let me think about that for a second. The last thing that I was wrong about. I mean, I get things wrong actually pretty frequently on stream, and I depend on my chatters to correct me. And then finally, when I release it publicly, my editor goes through and fact checks things for me, make sure it's right.
Nice.
Trying to think for a second. You know what? When I wrote my book, I found the most innocuous like things that you take for granted that you just assume that you hear and you just, it's like, oh, everybody knows that. I found that some of that shit is fake and you don't even realize.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one. You probably know this one, but it wasn't Kool-Aid that Jonestown people drank. It was Flavor Aid. That's a little fun fact, and also, or a not so fun fact. And also, there's one that I got wrong recently. I heard that Barron Trump was going to be a Florida delegate for the Republican Party.
Right.
And that was announced. That was officially reported in the news. But then it came out that I guess Melania Trump's, called it off and said, no, that's not happening. So I guess you could say I was kind of wrong about that one.
Yeah. That just sounds like the speed at which news got to you of a change wasn't fast enough before you talked about the pre-existing.
Right. That's why you got to take it slow, man. Don't jump the gun.
Yeah.
Take it nice and slow.
That's right. I love it. I constantly get geography stuff fucked up. That's like the easy one for me to do, because like somebody will say the name of a country and I'm like, and that is on which continent? And there's a couple of South American and African nations that I mix up. I guess the main one is Uruguay. I'm not always positive where Uruguay is.
Oh, that's in Africa, isn't it? Or
I think you're right, but now the problem is I've gotten it wrong so many times. Yes, it is in Africa. I've got wait, it's in South America. Uruguay's in South America, next to Argentina.
Is it really?
Yeah, below Paraguay. See,
fucking shit.
See, we've done it together. But it's one of those things now where I think I'll never know for sure because of the corrective nature of the past, being really embarrassed, to now even when I get it right, I doubt that I've gotten it right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's funny. Somebody was talking to me earlier. I think I saw it in some chat. It was a StarCraft 2 general chat. And I don't usually engage in that shit because whatever, I'm just here to play a game. But I saw somebody say South American immigrants, or they're in South America, they pay immigrants health care and they give them money. And I said, isn't South America a continent? And everybody was like, yeah, it's a continent. I'm like, how the fuck do you think they would be getting money from a continent?
Right.
Who is giving these people money? Anyway, people are so fucking stupid sometimes. It drives me nuts.
There are people who understand that the United States has its own government separate from Canada, understands that there's even a difference in state governments, but have no concept that South America has different countries, no concept of Africa having closed off countries with non-open borders and plenty of places.
Right.
They have no concept of that, and yet it's funny how this is also like a perception of humans through time. So many people, except for the people from their time and their location, they just assume that for the rest of the world and the rest of time, everybody else is just walking around basically eating poop and not knowing how to build houses and stuff. Not everybody, but so many people, this has come up on the channel a few times, think that civilization started 5,000 years ago. And you're like, you know that humans have survived, and obviously we're better than ever now as far as medical understanding and stuff. But you do understand that cavemen weren't eating poop except until somebody was able to tell them why not to, right? You get that. And there was one guy we had on the phone was like, I guess I kind of did think that was how it was, that they were just walking around.
That's crazy. Well,
eating shit.
I always think to myself, are people really that fucking stupid? And then I remember, I don't know see, here's another thing. You don't know if it's true or if it's apocryphal, but I heard when I was younger that 6% of the U.S. thinks that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. That's something I should look up before I repeat it. But,
I looked that up recently.
It's
and I think it's more than 6%. What percent of U.S. thinks chocolate milk comes from brown cows? Here we go. 7%. A survey from the Innovation of U.S. Dairy found that 7% of American adults think chocolate milk comes from brown cows. And if that percentage sounds small enough to be reasonable, hang on to your hat. 7% of Americans is 17.3 million people.
That is insane.
2017.
Like, I think to myself, like, these people can't be that fucking stupid, right? They're pretending, or they're lying about it, or they have an agenda. And then I remember that statistic, and I'm like, no, they probably are that fucking stupid.
It's a bad world. We live in a bad world.
Yeah.
Before you became a skeptic, this is number 8. What was your silliest belief pre-skepticism?
Well, I've thought about this actually. Fascinatingly, I went back and I really thought about because I was a moderate. I was right in the center because I wasn't allowed to be involved in politics my whole life, being a Jehovah's Witness. So before being involved in politics to any degree, what filtered through to me was I believed that the Iraq War was justified and right, because we have a right to defend ourselves against terrorists, which is hilarious. Of course, Iraq wasn't the country that attacked us on 9/11. Let's see. I had a whole bunch of other interesting ones. Oh, I was actually pro-gay as a Jehovah's Witness. I thought people shouldn't attack gay people just for being gay. So that's kind of interesting.
What about do you got any silly magical beliefs?
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Yeah. My dad told me when I was little, and my mom told me this too about him, that he practiced black magic until one day he was like, he wakes up in the middle of the night, or I don't know, he was taking a nap or something. It was in the daytime. He wakes up and there's this face laughing at him, and he couldn't move. He was just frozen in place. And he tried to knock a Zippo lighter off of the table next to him, and it clattered down the wooden stairs where my mom was sitting, and she didn't hear it. And that's evidence that black magic is real, because up to that moment he'd spent his time practicing black magic, supposedly doing Jacob's ladder out of his arms where electricity shot between them and stuff. Obvious complete bullshit, right? But they were convinced that it was real, both my mom and my dad. And of course, they convinced me that it was real at I don't know, 5 years old or something. It was sleep paralysis, clearly, right? Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
I have, yep. I've had it.
It's like an exact description.
And I had it as a Mormon as well as since being a Mormon. So you don't have to be in Satan's coffers to have it. The right. Face thing is super common.
Yeah. I had it after leaving, and I don't really have it anymore. I've kind of found a way to pull myself out of it. But looking at art from the Renaissance era of sleep paralysis is actually fascinating. You ever looked at that shit?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've read a bunch.
Should I swear or no?
You can swear a lot for sure.
Oh, okay.
I think we were swearing right out of the gate. I think we swore in the first couple minutes.
Okay. You never know.
Yeah, I read up a bunch on it because there was a period of time where I was going through it quite often. Now I'll get it once every maybe a year and a half. It's not quite once a year, but I was having it monthly at the very least, mostly because of some medications that I was on to regulate anxiety. But that's what I think it was anyway. But yeah, it was interesting. And you see a lot of influence in art of the past, even just theological writings of the past. It's not unlikely that that's where some things from Dante's Inferno even came from.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had sleep paralysis, and after discovering what that was, it was clear as day that that's what my dad was describing. I also believed that it was a bad idea, ill-advised, not against the rules, but not a good idea to go to yard sales and just buy random shit, because you never know what that person does in the privacy of their own home. They could be, imbuing that thing with demons or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And now we've got a demonic Super Nintendo game that's going to possess me or some shit.
Which is hilarious.
We could only really... It is. We could only go to yard sales of other Jehovah's Witnesses largely. Every now and then we'd go to another though.
But like and if you own anything, what do you have that was never in the possession of someone else or in the ground amongst the demons? Like,
right?
That's unless you're chopping your own trees and building your own furniture, and even then, who touched that tree?
Yes. Absolutely. It's dumb as dog shit, like all of it, the entire belief system. But, that's what you believe. You buy that shit when you're in the religion or in any religion. Like you fall for so much stuff because, I don't know, we're like prone to superstition or something. I don't know what it is.
Something. Yep. That is for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Here's question number 9. This one's a little bit on a personal note because I'm working on, I'm starting some projects up, and I'm going to be doing some docu-series, I think, in this realm. Have you tried virtual reality? If so, what are your thoughts on it? When was the last time you tried it?
I think I put a headset on at a store once, but I've never gone beyond that. And when I saw it, I was very, very impressed by it. I thought that I was surprised that this isn't like already more widespread. Also, augmented reality, AR stuff like that overlays. I'm surprised that isn't like all over the place already. Also,
it's getting
but
there.
Again, yeah, I don't own any of it.
The hard part with AR is that to do it well actually does require quite a bit more technology. So the only headset right now that is good enough to walk around everywhere, nobody will do because it looks silly. The Apple Vision Pro is the only one that really can pull off great AR. Now, there's fun AR stuff to do in like the Meta Quest 3, but the difference in the quality of the pass-through is a lot. So like when you put on an Apple Vision Pro, it's so well scaled and the pass-through is so good that it looks more like you've put on something that you're seeing through, and maybe the colors become muted and it's a little bit blurry. But it's not, when you put on like any other headset, I'm clearly looking at screens through cameras. And so
interesting.
And the Vision Pro starts at $3,500, so it's not accessible either.
God. And that's the Apple one, right? Yeah. Vision Pro.
Yeah. I finally got to give that thing a shot recently. It is incredible. Totally different use case than the other virtual reality headsets. They're all mostly focused on like gaming and experiences, where Apple Vision Pro is trying to do what you're talking about. Put computing in your space, have as many monitors as you want. I'll tell you, 3D movies look better in the Apple Vision Pro that nothing else is a close second. Going to a movie theater and IMAX with the glasses is not even a close second. 3D movies I
would love to have VR stuff. That sounds awesome.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it more as I work on these projects, but for everybody now, my recommendation, if they've got a little bit like a console level budget, is get a Quest 3, because the Quest 3 is $500. You don't need a single thing more than that, though usually most people who do it a lot will upgrade the headband that holds it on. The one that comes with it sort of sucks, but
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, all of the VR I need is in my Virtual Boy. I'm good with that.
You're going to use a virtual, man. I want, at some point I want to have like all of the, I've stopped selling my headsets when I'm done with them, because I want to have kind of like you like having on display all of your history of video games. I want to have a full history of VR things. In fact, I've got to figure out, I'd given some stuff to a brother and I'm sure he's not using it anymore. I got to see if I can get my original Oculus Quest back, my original, or Oculus Rift back, and my original Rift. Anyway, nobody will care about this. They'll be like, all right, move on to the next things. I think virtual reality and augmented reality are the future. It's all right now. It's form factor. If they could put what the Apple Vision Pro currently is, not advance the technology except for adding new apps, but just what its current level of technology is in a pair of what looks like closer to normal glasses, everyone would be wearing it. It would replace smartphones. It would replace everything. So right now, form factor.
I completely agree. I have not actually used it to, not very much, almost not at all, but the little bit that I know about it, a little bit I've seen, totally agree. I think it's the future.
It's bananas. By the way, if you ever decide you want to try it out again, reach out to me because I might want to film you trying modern stuff. For
that's cool.
things.
Do you have the Apple one or no?
I'll talk to you about the project off air because I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But obviously I've tried one and have access to one. But yeah. All right. So number 9 or number 10. This is a very deep question. Owen, are you okay?
Mm-hmm. Am I okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I am okay.
I feel like that's the way most people respond. They're like, why are you asking? I just wondered if anybody has in a while.
Is there some trick to this?
Nah.
Well, I mean, I live in Manhattan. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. People would be surprised. Like, there are actually some inexpensive places to live in Manhattan. Not the best places to live, but they're here.
Sure.
So anyway, I live in Manhattan, and my wife is almost done with law school, got one more semester. My kid is enjoying high school. So yeah, things are going pretty good. Also, I love my job. I love editing. I love doing all this stuff. It's fun, you know?
Question number 11 is probably the most important, and this is the final question. Then we do the quiz, and then the show is complete. Well, usually obviously you'll say, you can remind people where to find you if you want to plug your book or anything. Then I'll read without you, unless you decide you want to stick around. Without you, I read the comments from the previous show on Patreon. But this is number 11. This is the final question. It's a very important question, and it's going to tell us a lot about you. What would you name a cat with markings around their eye that looked like a monocle?
Oh, God. Oh, God. I'm so bad. I feel like there's some really funny joke in here, but I can't think of it. I think I would call the cat Kittykins, I guess. Kind of like Watson or something. Like, Watson? I guess like a butler.
Okay, I like that one.
A butler that wears a monocle, you know, Kittykins.
I like that one.
Kittykins in. I think that'd be okay. Yeah.
We've had 2 people so far answer that they would want to reference the Monopoly Man in some way, only for me to reveal to them that that's a Mandela effect thing. While there are a couple of chance cards from history where he is featured, what most people are visualizing him on the box, all that kind of stuff, he in fact does not have a monocle.
That's true. I know. I mean, as a retro collector, of course, I've gone down this rabbit hole pretty heavily. Nice. I don't have any Mandela effect things that are like intense, except for Shazam with Shaq. I remember that movie, you know, with Shaq as a genie, whatever. I straight up remember that.
And
real.
What is the Mandela effect? Does that movie not actually exist?
No, it's fake. Apparently, never happened.
Interesting.
Turns out. Do you remember that too?
I remember. Well, I remember Kazam, which is a movie
with Shaq. Right?
Yes,
it is
as a genie. But you're saying you remember him being called Shazam?
Yeah, and it's Sinbad that played the role.
Oh,
you did.
I'm not familiar with that at all. No. Yeah, that never made it to me. Shazam.
Well,
Sinbad.
as a joke, Sinbad dressed up as a genie and, like, you know, did this whole promo not too long ago just because of the Mandela effect, and he wanted to fuck with people.
Interesting.
He did actually dress up as a genie in an old TV show in the 90s for a skit at one point, but it was like a 1-episode type of deal. And that's probably where all of the Mandela effect stuff comes from. They saw a commercial for it, and then they mixed up that commercial for it with Kazam, and, you know.
I see. Okay.
That's where it came from.
I wasn't aware of, I thought you were telling me that the movie Kazam did not really exist. And I was starting to freak out because I was like, I remember scenes. What?
Yeah.
I was,
right.
I was getting worried. All right, cool. Well, I sent you the link. Do you want to pull that up? Do you want to pick out a design we'll send to?
Yeah, let me take a look here.
I've had ChatGPT pick. You're going to be playing on behalf of Bob. Bob, your email address, if you're listening, starts with a G and is a Yahoo email address, so that'll help to the part. But I'll message it to you either way. Your consolation.
All right,
prize.
so I get to pick any item here, right?
Yep. Yep.
All right, let me see. I'm just looking through here. I gotta find the best thing.
Do you like the new
we
one?
got coffee mugs.
Do you like the with the emoji on it? Do you get it? That's our newest one.
I don't get that one. What is it?
So to me, that's the demon emoji, and we keep getting demonetized, so it's demon. Yeah.
Okay, demonetized. Okay, that makes sense. I got it. Yeah, I just have to sit there and think about it for a second, but I guess that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. I hope.
Interesting.
Like
okay, well, let's see.
A little bit of a double play too.
I'm a big fan of coffee mugs.
Okay.
Although like the shirts and the hoodies and stuff, some people may like those better, but personally I use coffee mugs every day, and I would like to think that other people probably use coffee mugs a lot too. So
cool.
I'm gonna say the coffee mug. Yeah.
Which one?
In fact, the black one. Black and white one. Unafraid to disappoint, daddy, magical or otherwise. I like that.
Hell yeah. Good. Awesome. Awesome. All right. That's Bob, we're going to send you the tall one. Last time we did 2 of the smalls, I think. We're going to send you a link to get the bigger mug. It might actually just offer it either one. So, but we're going to send you one mug. You can pick the tall one, and that's what we're going to be playing for today. 15 ounces. I was trying to open it up to see what it is. So and if you do not win, there's a consolation prize we'll give you a $10. Is it constellation? No, it's consolation. Like you're consoling
consolation. Yeah, consolation.
We'll send you $10 to the merch store if we don't get it. But I will say there's a few news things. There's a Nintendo trivia thing in here. There's a fallacy thing in here. I think you're going to do just fine, but we'll find out.
Nintendo trivia.
Yeah, that's right.
I will smash the shit out of that. I would be willing to bet.
You'll probably be disappointed at how easy it is then, because in reality, we hope you win. We want to do the giveaway, so we don't make it terribly hard. But the current event stuff is probably the hardest stuff, because it's a matter of if you read the news from time to time and general news.
Okay, well, as far as Nintendo stuff goes, I don't know if anybody is aware, but I have a game collection, and I am a Nintendo fanatic. Yeah. I have every console from 1987 onward, not just Nintendo, but like Genesis and 32X, Super Nintendo, GameCube, all of it. So I love this stuff.
Do you watch when like Linus Tech Tips does their updates on like, hey, here's the newest TV that can actually pull off good looking console gaming, stuff like that?
I didn't realize they had that kind of thing. The thing about CRTs is they're analog effectively.
Right.
And so they're so instantaneous that it's very hard to replicate on a modern TV. I guess they've done it, but it's really, really difficult. And a lot of the games, like Battletoads, for example, you can't play or win Battletoads without a CRT or something approximating a CRT. It's impossible, literally impossible, because it's too fast.
I'll have to find for you. It was something within the last year, but there's a TV that came out, and there's 2 things. There's a TV that came out, and then this little like almost blow up projector TV. I don't remember what it was called. But there's one where you could blow up this thing and project inside it, and it would get you the same stuff. And then there's a new TV that has the ability to be like a regular TV, but also has a special technology in gaming mode that actually can do like, and maybe it's
dog hunt and stuff.
It might be RetroTink 4K video upscaler, but that's not the TV. Maybe it was a thing. I don't know. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway,
FrameMeister is commonly the upscaler that people use, but I think they're either out of. I don't think people are making it anymore, and I think it's also really expensive. I just have a CRT, and by the way, all the CRTs that exist today are all the CRTs that will ever exist, because we don't produce the parts anymore to make CRTs. So if you have one, hold on to it.
Yeah. Unless somebody figures out how to make them cheaper and in their homes instead of needing a factory, but that's probably unlikely.
Yes. Yeah, they don't make the parts for it anymore. The cathode ray tube, electron guns in the back. They just don't make those parts anymore.
Word. All right, well, cool. Here we go. This is question number 1 from the trivia, playing for Bob for a Unafraid of Daddy mug. This week, a 50-foot yacht sank in the Strait of Gibraltar after an encounter with what? Was it A, a pod of orcas which rammed it, B, a rock formation which had been covered by high tides, C, acidic algae that ate away the hull, or D, your mom?
Oh, man. I don't actually know. I'm going to go with C because I know that there's algae that's acidic and causing problems right now. Is it C?
It is not C, I'm afraid. Hang on, let me see if I've got a disappointing sound here. We'll do a record scratch.
Okay. There you go.
The correct answer, and this has actually been happening, this is a developing thing that's happening more and more. It was a pod of orcas which rammed it.
Damn, that was my second choice.
Yeah, that's happening more and more. Orcas are sinking yachts in parts of the ocean. It's
well, good for them. Fuck yacht owners.
Yeah, fuck yacht owners. Oh man, I could not. Zuckerberg got a new yacht recently, and it made me want to eat them. I was like, damn.
Right. One day we'll get our opportunity.
Let's do. I'll go to the Nintendo one, just for a little refresh. In Super Mario Brothers 3, which item allows Mario to fly after running at full speed?
Oh no, then that's the raccoon tail.
You're gonna want to hear
the leaf. It's a leaf.
Yeah. So there's the choices are super feather, super leaf. That would be B. C is frog suit, or D sciatica.
Yeah, it's the leaf. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one. I know this shit like the back of my hand.
You were kind of right with your first guess, because in Mario 3 you can get a Tanuki suit, which is the raccoon suit I think you're referring to, that has the ability to fly. But of the ones, the B was correct. Yeah. Air horn.
The raccoon tail is what you get when you get a leaf. The Tanuki suit is apparently a mythical creature in Japan. It's kind of like a bear. And the P-Wing is a special item that gives you the ability to fly. Like your run speed never drops off for the entire level. So
Super Mario 3 is probably my favorite Mario. But this is we'll give you this sound for getting it right.
Okay.
There you go.
I've got that too. I got those sounds.
Nice. Are you on the same board as me? Road Procaster?
Yeah. I took your recommendation.
I fucking love this. I'm not even on a computer. I'm recording this literally directly into the board. I don't bother hooking up a PC for the podcast. I love it.
That's cool. Yeah, it's the shit.
All right, here's question number 3. Why are several major airlines suing the Biden administration? Is it A, a new law requiring them to more deeply clean plane interiors? B, a new rule forcing them to disclose airline fees up front? C, new policy requiring pilots to face sobriety checks? Or D, Lauren Boebert is not yet on the no-fly list and they are suing because they would like her to be?
I think it's B. It was the fees thing. I remember hearing about this. Got it.
Hell yeah. That's right. They are very upset that they might have to disclose up front, and that if they give you a price, that would have to be the price they honor, and they aren't allowed to add the fees after the price. Now, if we could only add that to like hotel bookings, that would be wonderful.
Man, you want to hear some shit? It's kind of on subject. Just take me a second. But there's like when they were trying to forgive student loan debt, the companies, I guess the government kind of sells the debt to another company so that it, kind of gives the debt out. And when Biden forgave it, which is, the president's right to do, the companies sued because they were being made whole. The government was paying them for the loans.
Right.
But they were not making money off of the interest that they would make by people not paying the loans or taking too long to pay. So they were suing the Biden administration because they weren't allowed to fuck people over anymore, and they wanted to. That's literally some wild problem. Shit.
They were literally the problem, and they were suing because they felt they had the right to be charlatans.
The problem. Yep.
All right. Here's let's see. We've got 2 left. I'll give you another. I'll give you another that I feel you living in New York, you should know this one.
Okay.
Which famous actor was recently punched in the face in a seemingly random attack in New York City? Was it A, Burt Reynolds, B, Tom Cruise, C, Steve Buscemi, or D, my mom?
I don't actually know. I didn't hear about this shit.
Oh my goodness.
I'm
It happened this week.
I'm going to say, wait, I'm going to say, who, can you tell me who it was again? What was the first one?
A is Burt Reynolds. B was Tom Cruise. C was Steve Buscemi. D was
I'm
my
going
mom.
with, okay. Well, she is a celebrity in some circles.
I want you to win, so I'm just going to give you a hint. Remember, New York City is the place we're talking about.
Okay. I'm going to go with